Good evening. Thank you all for being here. At this time, I'll reconvene the Keepa City Council meeting of June 18th, 2013. First item on the agenda is the Pledge of Allegiance, so I'd ask that you all please rise. Place your hand over your heart and repeat with me.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. We have to apologize for being in here, but the air conditioning system in our council chambers is not working well, and we didn't want everybody to roast in that area. So we'll have to be crammed into this area for at least today. All right, the first item on the agenda is public comment. Anyone wishing to speak on an item on the agenda, I'd ask that you please fill out a request to speak form. It's a form like this, and it's in the hallway here, and give it to our city clerk over here. And that anyone wishing to speak on an item not on the agenda may do so. I do have some requests to speak on this agenda, so if you could please stand, go over to the stand over here, and if you could keep it to 3 minutes, we'd appreciate it. And the first request to speak is Greg.
Ken?
Yeah.
Well, the reason I'm in today is the building is at Tampico, going up at Tampico and Eisenhower. I don't know how it got through the board. I have sent letters to the Building and Safety Commission. I've given your office copies of those letters. They've gone unanswered by the Building and Safety and also by your office. I tried to make an appointment with your office yesterday to see you personally and basically got the bums rushed. They said that she'd call me back to set up an appointment. So perhaps in another week or month, I might get a phone call. But right now, the building that's over there is nothing like the photograph or the architectural drawings that were rendered before that building was built. I thought we had a height restriction of being 2 stories. That building is like probably 3.5 stories. So I just wonder how it got through, planning. I know from my own experience with dealing with the city, you guys are extremely difficult to work with. So I don't know how they got that thing situated on that lot in that particular area approved.
I said the same thing.
It's awful. It is
It doesn't come before the city council. It goes through the planning commission, and they have the final stamp of approval on the design. And I think it would be best if maybe our planning director, Les, you talk to the gentleman and see what we can do to alleviate his concerns.
Mr. Mayor, though it does meet the height requirements of the city based on the codes. Correct?
Well,
It's
Les can bring you up to date on that. But aesthetically, I have questions on that.
Each floor must be 20 feet tall, the ceilings in there, to be within code.
Greg, I ask that we have our people here right now.
Let's move on.
Talk to them.
We'll move on. As far as the code compliance department, are we like really short-handed that they can't get back to me either?
You should get a response back.
It was May 7th when I sent the letters to them and to your office, and in 7 weeks, nobody's been able to contact me. That's pretty sad. Last but not least, policy on animal control here in the code or in Keita. If there's a vicious dog known to be in the neighborhood that has bitten and killed another dog, that has bitten an 8-year-old girl, why has the city not put that dog down?
I can't answer that question. I don't know.
These are things that maybe the council might want to be aware of. I brought it to the attention of animal control before my neighbors were mauled in April by this same dog that has already gone through quarantine from the city. So I need to find out if when a dog attacks somebody, is the owner of the property that this dog resides at, are they notified by the city? Is the quarantine mandatory for these dogs? And why are these dogs not destroyed? Why was it not destroyed when it killed a neighbor's dog the first time? Why was it not destroyed after it bit an 8-year-old girl? And then why, supposedly they've been destroyed, the city says they've been destroyed after they attacked my neighbors and both of them had to go to the hospital for stitches. So,
You have some questions and
I sure
need
do.
answers.
I sure do.
There's no question about
You
it.
know, as a resident here, I think that my letter should get returned or addressed. As an investor in La Quinta, I own several properties here. I think that, you know, I should be addressed. And why has it been 7 weeks since I contacted your office that somebody in your office couldn't have picked up the phone and called me and said, hey, you know, we're making sure these things are being taken care of.
Mr. Cannon,
Uh-huh.
as much as we would like to interact with you, you're speaking under public comment, and the policy is that the council listens to
Okay.
what you have to say,
I-
and hopefully.
I covered it, my 3 minutes are up.
Well,
I thank
wasn't
you.
going there, but
Okay.
hopefully, we have staff here that has listened to everything that you've said, and not only will you get those answers, but we'll get them at the same time, and we'll be better able to
Okay.
discuss it with you.
So that's all I have to say. You guys have a good evening.
Thank you.
Thank you, Rick. Robert Silk.
Good evening to everyone in the audience, the council, honorable council members. Today I'd like to speak to you. I was myself and our organization Concerned Citizens were contacted by Crystal Rogers and her mother to ask us to sign a petition allowing backyard hens at their in homes in La Quinta. After I talked a few times regarding this petition, Crystal and I were able to converse, and I realized that this was a very serious request on her and her mother's part. I read her petition, and I thought that it made sense that they wanted to raise hens to sell their eggs for their own consumption. And I stated that I would put this out to a poll of our 2,200 members. We could take a sampling of about 100, and we did that. And the first question was, would you vote in favor of hens being allowed in any and all yards in La Quinta? And the result came back, 87% said no and 13% said yes. The second question was, outside of gated communities and those with homeowners associations, if strict regulations were adhered to, such as health and safety issues of the hens, disease-wise, and of the public, and noise issues with neighbors, with all the clacking going on, and that if the hens were penned in as to not attract birds and coyotes, which would disrupt other neighbors, I guess, of course, how would you vote? And we were very surprised to see a complete reversal, that the vote to allow hens was 91%, and the vote not to allow was 9%. So we at Concerned Citizens of La Quinta and myself stand with Mrs. Rogers and her daughter Crystal, who are here today, and I'd like to speak to you after my announcement. So, thank you very much.
Deborah Rogers.
Oh, that's me. That was the first sentence of my speech. Hello, I'm Deborah Rogers. Hold on, does it start now, the 3 minutes? I've lived in this cove for almost 25 years. I love La Quinta. This is the best city in the valley. We have art, old town, farmers market, love the farmers market, library, church. You guys are doing a great job, I think. I do have backyard hens. They are my pets. They make me breakfast every day. I don't think a hen is a farm animal, no more than a dog or a cat. They are a green pet, which means they give back. They eat every kind of bug and spider. Chicken droppings are good for the garden. Doesn't smell or anything. They are my therapy pets. They keep me out of the mall and off El Paseo. In the fine city of Costa Mesa, they offer classes in backyard hen keeping. I feel as a homeowner, I have a right to plant my own food and to know what I'm eating. I only eat the eggs, not the chickens. This is a sustainable food source and an uncertain economy. Chickens on commercial farms are treated badly and fed all kinds of nasty growth hormones and antibiotics and God knows what. I'm a responsible pet owner, and hens sleep at night. They don't bark, they don't bite, they don't roam the neighborhood, they don't chase cars, they don't make any more noise than a dog or a cat. It's not for everyone, but it's for me. They are my pets, I love them. This is my pursuit of happiness. What can I do to change this ordinance? I'm willing to get a license. Thank you so much. Can I have a show of hands in favor of anything I said? Anybody? Oh, thank you. I appreciate that. Thank you so much. Thanks for your time. Thanks for listening. Okay, I'm out here.
And Crystal Rogers.
Good afternoon, I'm Crystal Rogers. I grew up in La Quinta, and I've been a resident of La Quinta, moving off and on for the past 23 years, and my mother has been a homeowner for just as long. And the reason I'm here today is because according to the City of La Quinta Municipal Code, it is a public nuisance, and it is unlawful for any person to keep any poultry within 50 feet of any dwelling. I disagree. My mother has chickens, and she loves them very much. They are not a nuisance. She was told that she could not have roosters, and we need to find them new homes. So I started a petition to find out if anybody else thought backyard hens is a good idea too. We've collected over 150 signatures since May 30th, and I've compiled some info for you all detailing and explaining why hens truly are an asset to the community. You can find a copy of the petition in there as well as a few comments from some of the signers included in the packet. We also started the Coachella Valley Backyard Hen Campaign as a way for others who are interested to network and get involved. We intend to change backyard hen bylaw in every city valley-wide. Coachella Valley Backyard Hens comprises a diverse group of area residents dedicated to awareness, advocacy, and education concerning urban hens within Coachella Valley. Supporters believe that responsible urban hen ownership is a vital part of sustainable urban agriculture and can provide Coachella Valley residents with greater control over their food sources. The main objective of Coachella Valley Backyard Hens is to amend local bylaw to allow residents to keep a small number of backyard hens and no roosters within an urban area. It's the Quinta's turn to join this positive and growing trend. In general, where municipalities permit hens, a small number of laying hens, generally 8 to 10, is allowed. Roosters and home slaughter is not permitted. The same noise, nuisance, and animal cruelty rules that apply to dogs, cats, and birds will apply to hens. A permitting system is not utilized. Bylaw compliance is enforced through bylaw complaints when necessary. This entire situation can be described as a silly misunderstanding. There is one reason code enforcement came upon my mom's hens. The neighbor was issued a code violation, and in an attempt to pass the buck, shall we say, complained that the woman behind her had roosters. It was not a noise complaint. She has no roosters. It was not a nuisance complaint. She has had chickens off and on for the past 10 years with no complaints. They are a natural pesticide, they reduce waste, as well as contribute to compost for gardening. There's even a market for chicken food building and workshops in the valley. I was recently made aware of EE Enterprises and iHub, a new innovation accelerator campus for stuff just like this. It's the first one in the state of California, and it's entirely focused on sustainability. Please read our petition and allow backyard hens within the urban city limits of the state.
Thank you, Crystal.
Frank, got a question.
Yes.
Any city here in the valley allow hens? Do we know?
We have not looked that up.
India.
India on Palm Springs.
On Desert?
Palm Springs.
Palm Springs does?
Homeowners.
India.
Homeowners outside of the, like you said, the
Gated community.
gated communities and,
communities, right. Might be interesting to find out from them, you know, what it takes and what their experiences have been, and that could give us a starting point to look at the situation. Okay, will do. Okay.
We'll get some information back.
Believe it or not, we will respond.
I don't think a whole lot. It just depends on the list of what you can do, what color that is. That's the color you can Yeah.
Thank you. All right, we still are in the public comment. Anybody wishing to speak on anything else not on the agenda? Seeing none, thank you again for your response, and let us take a look at it. Okay. All right, move on to confirmation of our agenda. Are there any changes, additions, or deletions by staff
There are none?
and by council members? Next is presentations. We do have two presentations. The first one is the Salton Sea Action Committee. Oh, Juan? Doesn't have your name on here, Juan. Good to see you.
Good to see you. Buenas tardes. Good afternoon. Honorable Mayor, members of the City Council and staff, and members of the public, thank you so much for allowing me to come and speak. And thank Lee and our board members for setting this up, and special thanks to Chris Escobedo, who's also always very professional and courteous. Did a great job in hiring him here, so congratulations on that. Let me read you the mission statement and then our organizational vision statement about the Salton Sea Action Committee. I did bring some boards. So you can see a lot of the activity that happens, that's happening around the sea, and happens throughout the year. In fact, if you like, I can leave this here, it's this afternoon, it's a couple of days, it comes from up later. And we'll just have it here for use or whatever. And I'll tell you a little bit about the board members and then some of our committee structures and some of the activities that we've taken on and continue to work on as we support the Salton Sea Authority and all their efforts in the restoration efforts of the sea. So our mission statement, the Salton Sea Action Committee exists to support efforts to effectuate the completion of the restoration of the Salton Sea and its region in order to prevent environmental collapse, unnecessary wildlife habitat, prevent airborne particulate disaster, create recreational and tourism opportunities, explore integrated clean energy restoration solutions, improve the regional economy, and preserve this great resource for future generations. The Salton Sea Action Committee is a not-for-profit organization incorporated in the state of California to support Salton Sea restoration efforts. The Board of Directors of the Salton Sea Action Committee sees the Salton Sea as a resource that cannot be lost. The organization seeks to support restoration efforts through various methods. First, fundraising for the purpose of political lobbying on behalf of the Salton Sea restoration. Next is grassroots political activism in support of ballot measures and local, state, and federal legislation that achieve the goal of Salton Sea restoration. Grant applications for funding of various components of the restoration process. Engaging in the contracting of experts and professionals for the purpose of resource master planning, including environmental, engineering, and design strategies. Promotion and education of the Salton Sea Integrated Project and Salton Sea issues, answers, and solutions/implementation strategies. Support of academic and educational awareness of both Salton Sea issues and Salton Sea resource opportunities in an effort to attract student participation and potential creation of jobs. Exploration of solutions tied to clean energy technologies that may reverse damage and/or enhance the sea's vitality and restoration process. Through the use of these and other methods, the Salton Sea Action Committee envisions integrated solutions to the restoration of the Salton Sea, which will include long-term funding opportunities for both the infrastructure necessary to save the sea, as well as long-term maintenance of the sea. The resultant regional, environmental, and economic betterment will preserve and greatly enhance the livability of the Coachella and Imperial Valleys. Let me introduce you to some of the board members. We've got a stellar group of folks that are working hard to support the Salton Sea Authority and the Salton Sea restoration efforts. I'm the president this year and hopefully next year. they don't kick me out. Dennis Rieger, he has a lot of property down in Imperial Valley, around the Salt City area. He's pumped in about $38 million of his own money. He's invested there in the Salt City area. He's our first vice president. Alan Pace is our second vice president. Treasurer is none other than Lee Osborne. I almost called you Linda. Secretary is Paul Quill, who's here. There he is. Jeff Brothers, he represents the Imperial Valley, but he spends a lot of time up in, he's actually up from Northern California, up by Monterey County. Brad Dene with RBF, Graham Donaldson with Cold Green, they're a solar energy company. Tim Day with the Chambers Group, they do a lot of environmental work. Bill Green is an engineer with RBF Consulting. Jason Jackson, Desert Security Services. Jason is also a council member in El Centro. Matt Johnson, Matt Wilson Johnson. Randy Keller, who's with Kell Energy. Kell Energy owns about 10 geothermal plants out in the south side of the Salton Sea. Vince Signorati, who is with Energy Source, and Energy Source has finished building their plant last year, actually, in April, and that came out to about $420 million investment on their part. Doug Beers, great guy. He's he owns a paint and sandblasting company and investing a lot of money down in the Salton Sea. In fact, he's bought some dredges and some barges to help clean up some of the boat launching areas so that we can actually get boats back on the sea. Right now we can't because it's too low and there's a lot of concrete in and around those boat launching areas. And last but not least, Andy Voster. He's also on our board. So we have, like I said, we have a stellar group that's working hard, putting a lot of money into it, and a lot of time. We've made this organization very inclusive, and we've created ex officio board memberships. And some of those folks that are that are ex officio board members who attend the meetings, we get about 30, 40 people at our meetings, and we do meet way out down the southern end of the county of Riverside and the Coachella Valley.
Great Pond Hall.
That's right. We call it the Juan Mahal.
Juan Mahal.
Anyway, Riverside County, Imperial County, Imperial Irrigation District, Coachella Valley Water District, Imperial Valley Economic Development Corporation, the Coachella Valley Economic Partnership, CVAG, Imperial Valley, Association of Governments, Imperial County Farm Bureau, Salt Community Services District, Torres Martinez Rescue Indians, Augustine Band of Puy Indians, Cabazon Band, 29 Palms Band, Agua Caliente, and just about every state, local, and federal elected official has a representative on the board, on the ex officio side. So as you can see, we do have a lot of folks that are coming together and working together to try and address this huge challenge that we have before us. Hopefully we'll get another burp, so we get our attention in the summer, just like we did last year, and that was really a blessing in disguise. We started getting a lot of phone calls, and people really started saying, hey, we really have to do something about this. Well, we've known that for a while, but now, with this big burp from last year, people are really taking note of it and saying, hey, what can we do to help? So that's been a real godsend to us. We do have some committees. We have a public policy and legislative support lobbying committee. We have an infrastructure financing district committee set up by Paul. An education and community outreach committee is chaired by Andy Rosler. Public-private partnership committee is chaired by Brad Dene. And fundraising committee is chaired by Dennis Rieger. And last is the creative solutions, that's chaired by Alan Pace. And that's how we're going to get things done. The committees have been formed. They're going to start working on their work plans for the year. They'll come back, and then hopefully the board will adopt the strategies, and then you'll continue to hear more and see more from us and about us in the near future.
Great.
Just one last thing is that we've been very active. We've been supporting the Salton Sea Authority in some of their efforts by paying for some things that they couldn't. For example, they went to DC back in, I want to say November. Very successful trip, and we actually paid for their brochures and their exhibit boards that were very instrumental in telling the story about the Salton Sea and also getting the attention of the staffs of the different agencies that we went to visit. We paid for a big lunch and paid for the bus for a contingency from Uzbekistan. They came out here to study the sea because they went through economic and environmental impacts of their own when the Aral Sea, which is much bigger than the Salton Sea, dried up. And so they suffered a lot of economic and environmental impacts over in their region of the world. We paid for and sponsored the Salton Sea exhibit at the Indian Wells Arts Festival. Hopefully we can do something with the La Quinta Arts Festival next year. And this week we're sponsoring the reception and again the bus for the Senate Special Committee on Renewable Energies that's been headed up now by Ben Wessel, Senator Wessel. And so those are the kind of things that we were set up to do, and we'll do more of those kind of things, but also other things on the education, community outreach, and some of the like the 3P public-private partnership projects in the future.
Well, one is, as a member of Seabags Energy Environmental, you know, we made the trip down there and heard the presentation and actually went to the shores and were on the water and saw the fish and the whole thing. And you didn't really go into the proposed restoration plan, but I was just shocked if anybody can see the poster board that's kind of cut in half. The goal is separating it into two pieces with using geothermal, really maximizing all the elements that Salton Sea has available to us for business reasons as well as the recreation. But that across the wall, so to speak, is 8 miles. And that's on the long part. It's still an 8-mile stretch. Just gives you a sense of the enormity of that body of water. And I commend the group, because I remember talking to Paul when this was first being developed as a nonprofit. And I think what you've been successful in doing is getting all the agencies and all the cities that have expressed an interest in obviously having concern over the Salton Sea, but nobody's carrying the flag. We don't want to own it per se, but we want to help and we want to assist and we want to be part of it. And your group is kind of owning it with the Salton Sea Authority and really reaching out to all of the right parties. If we just get the state of California now to release the money that's designated for that, so we can move our more affordable plan than what they had in mind, we'll be really making some strides. So congratulations on the accomplishment so far. It's impressive, very impressive.
Thank you. Just a couple of things is, Paul and I, we work together. I work for Federated Insurance and Paul is our project manager on our project. And for example, Federated has put in about $100 million of our own money into investment there in that area. So, you know, we're committed for the long haul, and we continue to invest in agriculture. This year we put 100 acres back into production of lemons, and another 60 acres in September, another 100 acres next year in April. But Paul did a lot of heavy lifting in putting this together. Happy to say that you're the first city council that we've come before, and we do plan to attend the other council meetings and go before them and introduce ourselves and let them know that the Salton Sea Action Committee is here alive and working.
So if anybody in here wants to contact you, how do they do that?
Yeah, I do have some cards. I can leave them here on the table.
Website?
And we'd love to hear from you, and hopefully you can help us out in the future in one of our committees or one of our events that we'll be participating in.
Website is up. It's
That's
not,
right.
it's not very good yet, but it is up, and it's Salton, it's
It's a work in progress.
ssacommittee.org. ssacommittee.org.
Our museum has its own exhibit
Right.
right now.
Yes.
Let me remind you
Yeah.
about that.
Right.
I applaud you for your work. I went to a seminar, it's probably been 3 or 4 years ago with respect to Salton Sea, and there were a lot of different folks there, and each one had a different plan, a different ego, shall I say? And it's hard to, I just feel for what you're trying to do. It's hard to get a plan and then work on a plan and get everybody on board and moving forward. But what you're doing is the only way we're ever gonna get this resolved. So thank you so much for your effort.
Appreciate it. Addresses the health, the economic,
Everything.
recreation.
Well, I think it's the largest group
Hospitality.
that's come together in years. There's been, you know, little groups and little, not little efforts, because everybody's been sincere, but it's such a massive problem.
Right.
And the solutions are not just there for the picking. But I would ask that you don't get too happy about having another burp this year. I mean, I don't.
I get it, I get the momentum.
Yeah, I mean.
Short term.
Yeah, one was enough.
Maybe a hiccup.
Yeah, well, maybe 3 or 4 years.
So Paul, you
from
can't
now,
go out on the kayak this year.
have another
You gotta stay
one.
home.
If I can, one good thing about this as well, it brings Imperial County and Riverside County together. And there's equal amount of members into this board from both counties. So it is gonna take both to work together on this.
I think we're all aware of the importance of the restoration of the Salton Sea, because if it dries up, it's gonna drastically affect the valley tremendously. So we know how important it is. The other, maybe a week ago, didn't I see something in the newspaper in regards to an allocation in the budget about $40 million?
Yeah, $50 million.
Yeah, it's, what is it?
And
It's
that,
40 million.
yeah, I mean, that's just a drop in the bucket is what it's gonna take to do this, but hey, it's a start.
And it's not going to all come at once. What we could do in the future is, once the project's started, there was a state financial aid program that did fund, I think, 3 or 4 projects. And we could come back in the future and give you a brief presentation of what each one is and does and how it's going to benefit the restoration efforts of the sea, because those are those sparks that will be happening both on the north side and south side that are going to make a big difference in the future.
We need to put the pressure on our legislators that go ahead and promote these grants to do things like this.
And that's what we're set up to do, so we'll be calling on you in the future.
The committee on Friday is going to be taking a tour of the sea, and it's not focused just on renewable energy, right? It's focused on restoration efforts. And there will be, how many senators will be here on that bus?
There's going to be about 4 or 5, I think, 4 or 5.
From Sacramento will be down here specifically for that purpose. So
We need the support from the northern part of the state of California.
we really see that as part of our responsibility and is to help the Salton Sea Authority get that awareness in Sacramento that we desperately need. And
Well, thank you again.
Thank you, Juan.
Very much.
Okay. But you want to get up and leave? We understand. Next, we have a proclamation in honor of Amateur Radio Week in Nashville. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to come up here and read this proclamation. And Greg, you want to come up and accept it? All right. This is a proclamation for the acceptance of Desert Radio Amateur Transmitting Society to Mr. Greg Butler, one of our staff members in that. Amateur radio operators provide countless hours of community service, both in emergencies and to other local organizations. These individuals have provided services to our local police and fire departments and to the local organizations such as Angel View and the American Red Cross. They have provided free radio communications for such charitable events such as the Tour de Palm Springs. Amateur radio operators have repeatedly proven their importance in the modern world by providing emergency communications during such catastrophes, events such as the Hurricane Katrina, the tsunami in Japan, and most recently the devastation tornadoes in Oklahoma. On behalf of the City Council, it is my privilege to present you with this proclamation and thank you and the Desert Radio Amateur Transmission Society and all the amateur radio operators for your efforts in our community and throughout the world. Greg?
In fact, that's the big deal about amateur radio is it is money earning. So the amateur radio operators that you'll run into, they're doing it for the love of the hobby. and for the love of their community, they're willing to step forward at no cost to the community and provide those kind of emergency services. And most people aren't aware of all of what amateur radio operators do. So as part of Amateur Radio Week, we're hosting here at City Hall an event this weekend. Once every year, the National Society for Amateur Radio Operators has a contest where operators demonstrate their skills in adverse situations or unusual locations to be able to make contacts with people around the country and around the world. So working with the Desert Radio Amateur Transmitting Society, I'm hosting an event here this weekend, and they'll be operating for 24 hours continuously, starting Saturday at 11 a.m., running through Sunday at 11 a.m. It's open to the public. Invite your neighbors, come to this north parking lot. We'll have the CERT trailer out there. If you don't have an amateur radio license, they will put you on the air, and you can talk to somebody somewhere very far from here. And I'll be giving tours of the CERT trailer and also tours of the EOC. We'll also have some of the radio operators in the EOC operating a couple of high-frequency radios and also using some digital communication modes. So amateur radio is not your grandfather's telegraph key. However, you can still do that. But there are many, many modes of communication, and amateur radio operators love to show them off and talk about their hobby and introduce others to it. So if you or your neighbors want to come, we would love to have you. North parking lot, 11 a.m. Saturday morning is when it starts, and they're going to operate continuously for 24 hours. So thank you.
Which of these folks out here are part of the group?
I've got a group
Put
of
your hands up.
three or four folks here from the society, and this weekend's event is actually part of a contest for them, and this proclamation will actually get them bonus points. So they're a
So
little
they
inter-
compete as a group, your group's competing against other groups, or?
Our club will competes against other clubs in different categories, single operators, sometimes off of emergency power, even off of solar power. There's different categories, and there's one category for specifically for emergency operations centers, like we'll be activating for the city of La Quinta.
Excellent, that's great.
That's great.
And hopefully we'll never need those services, but you'll know that those people are there if we do.
Yes, you bet. Great.
So,
Thank you.
thank you again.
Okay, we'll move on to written communications. We have none this evening, and I'll ask for approval of minutes of June 4th.
So moved. Second.
Moved to second, all in favor?
Aye.
Now we'll move on to the consent calendar.
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, if I can, the consent calendar, I would ask that items number 4 and items number 14 be set aside for a second vote. I will need to recuse myself on both those items as to the proximity to my residence.
And with that, Mr. Mayor, I'll make a motion to approve the consent calendar as amended.
Second?
If I could, again, in regard to the other items, just a matter of discussion, if I could. Item number 5, regarding the resolution to adopt investment policy of the city of La Quinta for fiscal year 2013-2014, as well as item number 7, investment advisory board work plan for fiscal year. Just to comment in the sense that I mentioned earlier regarding the potential use of professional investment advisors. As shown in the policy, the investment advisory board has chosen not to look at that, and I think that is a mistake. I think they need to do the heavy lifting to look at that matter and to see what can be done for our city to maintain our safety principle, maintain our investment manner, but at the same time look to see what can be done to increase our investment revenue. We've done a lot of work at the city hall with our city manager and our directors to bring our budget back in the black, so everything helps. And I wish they would have taken the opportunity to look at this more in depth and a bit more hard work, but they chose not to, and I wish they would.
Are they looking into it at all?
No, sir, they decided not to. And I think
support
that's a
their
mistake,
decision.
but nonetheless.
I support the board's decision
I
for
think,
multiple reasons.
and thank you for your comments, I think the problem might be that the work plan and the policy and I don't really mean it as a problem, but it's so stringent that they don't have a lot of latitude.
Right.
I mean,
They don't.
And, you know, they can put it here, they can put it there. And if this is better this week, then they'll move it here or there. It's not like they can go out.
But, you know,
And-
those policies were set many years ago, and they pretty much left them alone. And back when I was on that, back in the mid-90s, we had some pretty heated discussions. Terry, you would remember.
Yeah.
About what can be included and what cannot be included. And for me, it came down to if we can stay within the realm of our safety principle, first and foremost, but at the same time, look at other areas. You know, back then, at that point in time, we looked at if we can use LAIF. That was gonna save us $200,000, which at that point was 2 police officers. And so we chose to stay with LAIF at that point, which was a big concern of one of the board members at that time. But we did a lot of hard work and a lot of disagreement and a lot of, you know, back and forth to make sure of it. And it's easy to say, no, just put everything in treasuries and walk away. But I think it deserves more work than that. But that's just a comment.
Well, we choose those commissioners because of their expertise and their knowledge of that realm. And looking at what their response was and their feedback in terms of the amount of gain or the amount of restrictions that we have and or the amount that might be consumed on fees for very little, we've got a couple or 3 members on that board that would love to have the opportunity to play and invest with the money because that's what they do. But they recognize the restrictions, and they're some of our best promoters over our conservative policies and the success we've had over the years. And I appreciate their decision and the fact that they did consider it and looked at what was best for La Quinta. So,
And to expound on what you're saying, I think in this interest market that we have right now, which is easy, I think our fees might outweigh any interest that we would get. I agree with the safety, but I'm also very supportive of the board decision at this point in time.
Well, safety is the prime concern in that. But I think, Robin, you know, you deal with them, and I'm sure there's a certain amount of guidance that goes along with the investment advisory board. And I think maybe you can massage this a little bit, and if there's ways we can do this without creating a problem, maybe that should be the thing to do.
so we're voting to, we have a motion and a second to approve it as they
As
Yeah,
as
well,
they
we're not
agree.
gonna- Yeah, change it. Yeah, that's just something that might take a look at.
I think that's what they think.
Okay, was there a motion?
Motion and second is
And
on
second.
the floor.
All in favor?
Aye.
All right,
And with that, Mr. Mayor, I'll move approval of items number 4 and 7 on the consent calendar.
14.
14.
Oh, I'm sorry,
4 and 14.
4 and 14.
Moved in second, all in favor?
Aye.
One abstention.
Motion passes. Okay, with that, we'll move on to our business session. The first one is the resolution to adopt the fiscal year 2013-2014 City of La Quinta budget and establishing the city's appropriation limit. Staff report?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor and members of the council. The item you have before you tonight is the 2013-14 proposed budget. And I wanted to take just a couple of minutes to review the process that we've gone through so far. So as you may recall, at the meeting of May 21st, we submitted the proposed budget for the first time. Subsequent to that, at the June 4th meeting, we had a budget follow-up session in which we discussed the excess revenues over expenditures and how to allocate those funds. And then before you tonight, what we're asking is that you adopt the budget with any changes that may come out of that and adopt the YAN limit. So just to go through a little bit more review, we submitted on May 21st, as I said before, the proposed budget with revenues, general fund revenues of $34.4 million. Our expenditures are $33.3 million, leaving us about $1.1 million excess revenue over expenditures. And then, as I mentioned, on June 4th, we had discussions of how we were going to allocate that excess revenue. And these are the items that we discussed. There is one other item I will talk about at the end here that we're seeking direction on. But we've put in $900,000 for Silver Rock Resort for the relocation of the irrigation system and the lost revenue for 1 year, while they have to close the back 9. We talked extensively about community service officers, and we're proposing adding 1 community service officer at a cost of $100,000. We put $50,000 for a police service review, and staff believes that that's adequate money to do a thorough analysis of the services that were provided by the police. And then we have $47,800, that's the remainder. And the item that we're seeking direction on tonight is there was discussion, but I want to make sure that we understand is additional funding for the chamber, and we're proposing $10,000 for that and want council's direction on that tonight. That still leaves $37,800 excess revenues over expenditures, and we're recommending that we use that for any unanticipated costs that come along during the year. In addition to that, every year we have continuing appropriations and encumbrances, and as you can see from this slide, our continuing appropriations are $907,900, and our encumbrances are estimated to be $164,400, for a total of $1.1 million. During the budget process, there were a couple things noted. The very first night in May, we realized that the medical insurance in the city council's budget was understated by about $65,500. And right after we first submitted the budget, we got our California Joint Powers Insurance Authority bill, and what we discovered from that was the general liability had a large credit, so we had extra money in that line item, while the workers' comp was understated by $85,000, under budgeted by $85,000. So what I did was take the money out of the general liability and spread it to the insurance and the workers' comp, so there was a net zero effect on that. And with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions you may have.
Questions of staff?
No, I just, it's always good to have work comp money and premiums go down, and we knew based on the work claim history and the reduction in workforce, that was gonna significantly lower that amount, so I think that was just a bucket issue when the other one came up, so we have funds to cover.
Sure.
That should be an ongoing trend, right? The reduced rate should be an ongoing trend.
With the crystal ball.
Yes.
The question, Robin, that I have, and I'll apologize first because you probably won't have the answer. So
Okay.
I'm not trying to put you on the spot. However, maybe you've got some sense or essence of what's going to happen to us in the next 5 years with PERS, and what how we are projecting that we're going to be able to deal with those. It's going to be tremendous,
Right.
the increases.
And I don't have exact numbers in front of me tonight. You do? Okay.
Basically, what occurs with PERS is that our PERS contribution as an employer this year is about $815,000. And in 5 years, given the notice we received from PERS, that will go up to $2.3 million. And that's-
Over the course of 5 years.
Yes, so in 5 years, it'll be at that dollar amount, and that does not anticipate that we're adding employees.
Right.
It just is what the city's contribution will be as an employer to that account.
Right.
How we handle that, we have not forecasted that yet. We have about 2 years before it starts going up in an exponential way, and so we're going to start planning for that when we get into the 14-15 budget.
Okay, do we have any estimate or any guesstimate on what's going to happen, excuse me, to health costs health insurance costs?
Again, I don't have exact numbers, but I think everything that we're reading and seeing is they continue to rise.
Yeah.
Sure.
The imposition of the Healthcare Act, our initial analysis that we've done will not have an impact on us because we are a healthcare provider that will not result in people having to go to the health exchange.
So
given what we pay for.
we're looking at something that's kind of neutral there.
Well, yes, in terms of the impact of the act, but if healthcare costs continue to rise, then we'll see those premiums go up.
Sure.
This past year, being in 2012, the employees are assuming some of the burden of those healthcare costs, and we anticipate we'll have ongoing discussions of that as our economic conditions change.
Okay, well, I just, because we live in a brand new world and everything that we're dealing with is new, and a lot of things that we're not dealing with because we haven't had them to deal with yet, we're still waiting for the governor to tell us what's new tomorrow. So I continue to be concerned about surpluses or reserves, if you will. I don't believe that a surplus is a surplus until it's in my hand. So I'm concerned about over projecting, if you will, at one time, and even as conservative as we were and continue to be, it might have been a little easier, but I don't see that now because we can't project the other side of the game. We can only project this little tiny city here, which is impacted constantly by what goes on in Sacramento. So I just wanted to, again, thank you for bringing this back the way you did. And I certainly like the idea of an additional CSO officer for next year. I think the community will appreciate that also. And that police service review, I'm hoping that you're going to do everything you can, Mr. City Manager, to not have that cost $50,000. And I would actually support the balance at that point, according to page 1 of our staff report, of $47,000 going back into the reserve account.
So you're not supportive of the 10,000 to the chamber?
At this point, I am not. Everybody else has taken severe cuts. We have not asked the chamber to take a cut. We're willing to continue funding them at what we've been funding them. They just want more. So that, I can't go there. It's just too much of a challenge for me.
The Chamber of Commerce took a cut like everybody else did last year. So they did take a
They did
substantial
take a cut.
Yeah,
They did. And I am in support of the $10,000 for the 4th of July event. I think it's a great community event. And the aspect that whether we want to send that money to the chamber for them to spend for the 4th of July event, or we spend it directly to those costs to that extent for the 4th of July event, I think it was a great community event, and we have more people in this community for that one event than any event we've ever had in the history of our city. So I think it's a good thing for our city and the residents of our city for that 4th of July event.
And
What about anything for staff?
I don't have any other questions. No, I think they did a great job on the budget. I think they put it together real well to wrap this up tonight. I think.
Surplus is good.
I
Christie?
have a question. If we were to go with recommended action, are we also approving the GAN? That's included in there. That's what the city's appropriation limit is. Okay. I have a comment if you're ready for those. Not a question of staff, but a question of David.
Okay, go ahead.
Does that work for you?
Well, I can be flexible.
How's the parade coming along? How's the whole 4th of July? Because last time you didn't have very many sponsors or vendors.
We've got 4 sponsors now.
Okay.
The Quinta Resort with the fireworks, the preponderance of that.
Okay.
And we've got 3 others: Costco, Agua Caliente, Band of Indians, and La Quinta Insurance.
Wonderful. And vendors.
And we're still working on some. So, and then the vendors we're over approximately 20 right now.
Good.
But we get a few every single day, so we
Okay.
should be at the 35 point mark.
Right, that sounds good. I'm in favor of the $10,000, but I would like it earmarked for specific, like police
right, I was
or
gonna make
whatever.
Yeah,
similar
paid
to-
directly by
I want,
the city.
well, I don't know if we need to do that, but I want it not to be just dumped into the pot. I would like it earmarked for
Yeah,
police or
specific.
something.
I was gonna make a similar recommendation. I
Okay.
support the 10. I supported outside their contract for services and
Right.
making it an event specific.
Right.
And doing up to 4 in police services, because I think the budget projections were 3,800. We wanna make sure that that's a safe environment, so we wanna make sure the police coverage is there. And as far as the other 6, I mean, whether we're the parade sponsor or some other top sponsor with those names, I mean, I figure the 6 they can do with as needed, but definitely keep it out of the contract for services, because that is specific to producing the gym. And, yeah, I would support the 10.
Good. First of all, I would like to thank staff for all the hard work they did to give us a balanced budget. And I like the fact that we were well over $1 million. I don't like the fact that 900,000 is going to the canal, because I was hopeful that we would resolve that problem another way than what it was. And, but we cut it down substantially, and I think that the $100,000 for the officer and that, and I can understand, but that did not come from the police department. That came from a citizens group thinking that bringing on more officers is going to reduce crime, and that it's going to be interesting, because probably a year from now I'm going to ask the question: did that one officer have a reduction in crime? And that, and it's because our crime element, the real bad crimes, it's gone down, but the theft and the burglary has a tendency to go up, and that it's the haves and have-nots, and that create this problem, and we understand it, but it's difficult for me to say that adding another police officer for $100,000 is going to reduce the crime, and that I rely on our police department to tell us what you need to do your job, and when we're getting it from the outside coming in, I'm not sure that they're well aware. They think adding more police officers is going to do things and that. But our problem is to try and balance a budget without going into our reserves, and we have to balance this bank account that the city has to utilize to do a lot of things in our city. But I was very proud of our staff for everything that they did to give us a balanced budget this year, that we don't have to dip into our reserves. So with that, my thanks for all the hard work, because staff had some hard decisions to make, and it hurt them too. So, but it'll be interesting to see, because I think Lee and I both are concerned about that pie chart, and that police officers is going around the corner, and you know how far up that line it's going to go before all we're doing is spending money for police service. I should say security, both police and fire, and that. And I understand your position, and I know Stan Smith's going to come over and want to talk to us again, and I have had conversations with him, and I understand his problem, but we're willing to listen, and we'll do whatever we can, because safety is #1 priority in this city for our citizens.
Okay, we're ready for a motion?
Well, before you make that motion, just for clarity, the funding that we're talking about is not for another police officer, it's for a community service
Community
officer.
service officer, but an officer.
And he probably will not be.
Or she.
Or she, thank you. Will probably, I'm not sure that we're gonna see a ratio decline in robberies or thefts or.
Well, I hope
petty,
so.
well,
I hope so.
I'm
I
not
hope
sure,
so that it
but we
goes
also
down.
have to remember with the governor's decision on realignment, that we have them walking in the front door and out the back door. And that is what's coming back to our communities, and that's what is raising a lot of the petty, that kind of stuff. And I think with the addition of the CSO, he will free up officers' times.
To be able to be out there.
Yes.
Yeah.
And police presence is more
Right.
important, because that deters crime.
Right. So I just
And
want
it's hard to quantify. I'm not sure how you can quantify. were there 10 less crimes or whatever,
Yeah.
just the presence and having someone else there, I think is really helpful.
Presence is the key.
I can, one comment before. Like it has been said, in regards to our city manager and our staff, you know, the city's been in the red for 2 years in a row, and we've turned this thing around, and we have not raised taxes. And I think our team has done an outstanding job to bring our budget into black. And I just want to give thanks to a great job that they've done to put us back in the black after 2 years.
Okay. Well, unless there's something else,
Well, I move
I'll
adoption.
entertain a motion.
I move adoption of a resolution of the city council approving the fiscal year 2013-2014 city of La Quinta budget and establishing the city's appropriation limit with $10,000 going to the Chamber of Commerce to augment the July 4th celebration.
Second. Did you want in your motions us the specific on that?
Well, they want some direction on it. Is that what you want?
Would you please?
Yeah.
On terms of the other items listed on the first page of the staff
Oh,
report.
okay, all right. I can do that. $900,000 to relocate the irrigation system at Silver Rock Resort and estimated loss in revenue for fiscal year 2013-2014. $100,000 to hire one community service officer. $50,000 for a police service review. $37,800 for unanticipated operating capital or expenses, and $10,000, and that would go into a reserve account?
Yes.
Okay, and $10,000 allocated to the Chamber of Commerce for the July 4th celebration.
Question on the second, before I second this, does this also include the move of 50,000 that we're bringing into the Coachella Valley Rescue Mission?
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
Yes,
That was,
We don't need to
yeah,
mention
the
that.
transfer.
It was included in part of the continuing appropriations.
Very
that
good.
movement.
I second the motion.
Been moved in second, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. All right, we'll move on to our business session item number 2. That's an ordinance amending section 8.01.020 of the municipal code regarding membership qualifications of building board of appeals. Staff report?
Honorable Mayor, members of the council, I'm pleased to tell you that the state law requires us to have an appeals board, but the good part about that is in the history of the city, we've only convened it twice. There's a downside to that. It's not a very interesting board to volunteer to serve on. So when we have openings, they're very difficult to fill. While the state requires us to have that board, it does not prescribe the composition of that board. Our municipal code does, and this ordinance proposal brought before you today is in hopes of making this easier to fill vacancies when they occur. Specifically, the ordinance or the municipal code currently requires 5 members. It requires one of them to be a general contractor, 2 to be either structural engineers or architects, 1 specialty contractor, and 1 a member of the public who is not any of those other folks. And so our proposal to you today is, because the requirement for a structural engineering is a very small subset of the grand pool of qualified engineers. And so it makes it very difficult to find an applicant who wants to serve, who also lives in the city, all of these requirements in order to even serve. And we believe that changing the word structural engineer to professional engineer, thus opening to the full pool of engineers, would allow us to have access to a much bigger pool of qualified people who can comment on whether our decisions that people don't like are fair and reasonable. And so that's what we're proposing to you, that you eliminate the word structural and just change it with the word professional.
How come you're ignoring the architect? Is structural engineer or architect?
Right, that position can be either, but
Right.
we actually currently have an architect on that roster. And so when it designates those 2 positions, they could both be architects, they could both be structural engineers, But
No, I don't have a problem.
for example, if
Being
Tim,
an architect, I was kind of.
yeah, if Tim didn't work for the city, he would not qualify
I just
to be on the
want you to
board.
ignore me, Craig.
Never ignore him. So I'm happy to answer any questions, but I don't think I need to prattle on anymore.
All right, thank you. Questions of staff? If not, I'll entertain a motion.
With that, Mr. Mayor, I'll move to take up ordinance number 516, amending section 8.01.020 of the La Quinta Municipal Code to revise the qualifications for membership for the Board of Appeals by title and number only and waive further reading.
Second.
Moved in second. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay.
And then again, we'll move to introduce
Get out
ordinance. Lynn?
Yeah.
No, we do it again. It's always those two first.
Ordinance 516, an ordinance of the City Council of the City of La Quinta, California, amending section 8.01.020 of the La Quinta Municipal Code regarding membership qualifications of the Zoning Board of Appeals.
Okay, now we'll go ahead and move to introduce ordinance number 516, amending section 8.01.020 of the La Quinta Municipal Code as set forth in said ordinance on first reading.
Second.
Moved in second. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, motion passes. Okay, we'll move on now to our study session. We have two this evening. The first one is update on the National Pollutant Discharge Elimination System permit for the Whitewater River region.
Mr. Mayor, I'd like to say that the engineering staff has decided they're going to introduce you to Mr. Raindrop, who is someone that they learn about in engineering school, so we're looking forward to this presentation.
Is he a professional engineer?
Yeah, there will be a quiz at the end to see who qualifies as Mr. Raindrop. Might be hard to believe, it is for me anyway, that it's been 5 years since we've talked about the city stormwater municipal permit. Just as way of background, there's two basic permits for stormwater that the city has to comply with. The general construction stormwater permit regulates discharges coming off of construction sites, and that's the sandbags and everything you see around the inlets around construction projects. And then there's the municipal or MS4 permit that controls urban runoff into the streets and eventually get into the channels and make their way into the Whitewater Channel, which is the subject of this permit. It's updated every 5 years, and usually the requirements go up, as they tend to on these permits. The importance of the permit as it relates to the city of La Quinta, I see is twofold. First of all, the permit is expensive to administer. The county takes over $1 million to administer this permit and fill out all the forms, provide the updates on the website and so forth to report to the state about our water quality. Our portion of that is $63,000, a little more than $63,000 this year, and it's going up probably another 30% we're anticipating next year. It just so it continues to be administratively an expensive program. But the second thing that I think that it affects for La Quinta is the pace of review of development is actually impacted quite a bit because of the fact that most projects fit into one of those priority projects. I don't know if Ed can recite them. That's why he's Mr. Raindrop. Probably Mr. Raindrop. But that triggers from the 2008, the current permit that actually just expired, but that required what we call a water quality management plan for most development projects, which is a binder that's about 5 inches thick that looks at everything that might be discharged from a particular development site. It's an expensive document for the developers to produce. It takes quite a bit of staff time to review it, and the real kicker on it is that the rules say you have to have that finalized before you can even have any kind of discretionary action on the project. So that's a significant time consumer when we get into development projects. The good news is for La Quinta and most of the development that occurs out here, the retention requirement that we have for a 100-year storm takes care of a lot of the requirements that are inside of the MS4 permit, but it doesn't alleviate the requirements for doing all the reporting, for doing the WQMP on those priority projects. We don't get a pass on any of that. And as Ed's going to explain here in a minute, there's things that are potentially going to be in the permit that could even elevate that more. The permit itself is still in a state of flux. It's scheduled to go to the Regional Water Quality Control Board on this Thursday. There are still things that might be introduced, and we're going to touch upon those. If certain US EPA, for instance, wants to has indicated they want to add some requirements, we will be at the public hearing to monitor that, and if there are changes, we will bring those back to the City Council or bring them through an IOI or something along those lines. With that, unless you have any questions for me, I'm going to turn it over to Ed for a quick highlight of the changes to the permit.
And now a word from Mr. Raindrop. As Tim mentioned, we do have two main permits in La Quinta, the general construction permit and then the one we're going to talk about today, which is this big mouthful, which is basically our municipal permit. Why do we have to do this? Well, it's required. Clean Water Act, state law, we got to do it. We got to keep the pollution out of our stormwater discharges. Our developers have to keep the pollution out. We have to watch them. Their maintenance do it. Who's included in this? All the cities in the valley, the flood control district, the water district, the county, all of us are in this permit. And as Tim mentioned, Thursday morning at 10 a.m. is when the permit comes before a public hearing at the regional board. It's going to be up in Yucca Valley. They've already asked me if I would speak on behalf of the cities if needed, and Jason Yulee is going to speak on behalf of the county. So we're trying to get our slides in order. If certain things are going to happen, which I'll go over here shortly. We know of some of the changes. The ones that we know about, we're going to review tonight or today. And the ones that we think are happening behind the scenes, coming from EPA mostly, we are guessing at, and we're going to hopefully be ready to be able to answer those at the hearing on Thursday. Okay, some of the changes that we know about. We put a lot of information in there about the environment. We were trying to make the case that we've only got 3.6 inches of rainfall out here. We're a desert. Please, please, please make our permit desert appropriate. Don't make us do all the stuff that you're making the coastal cities do that have big bays to worry about. We have a great track record out here in the last 15 years. All of our water bodies have been protected for the most part. There's a little segment down in the city of Coachella that is impaired. Coachella is working on it, and they hope to get that fixed in the next 3 or 4 years. So overall, we're doing great in our region. Iterative process, that's a very complicated term, so whenever something's complicated, I go to baseball. If you're a batter, what this is saying is there's one part of the permit that says you get one strike. If the beaker goes in the water and there's pollutant in the water, bam, automatic permit violation. There's another part of the permit that says if the beaker comes up with pollutant, oops, you get to analyze and figure out why that pollutant's in there and you get to correct it. Well, with help from our own city attorney's office, we were able to craft language to help us put in this current draft that would allow us the ability to have some analysis potential. So if we do get a beaker that comes up with a positive hit, we get the chance to analyze it, figure out what's wrong, and correct it without getting a violation. So hopefully that language stays in there on Thursday. It's in there now. CIP projects. I know this is going to shock you, but the water board is adding more costs to our CIP projects. Now, in the old way we did business, those CIP projects only had to be covered under the municipal permit. Now they have to be covered by the municipal permit and the statewide general construction permit. So we have to pay double fees, and those fees are all going up, we're told, in September by about 30%. So if that does happen, we might have to come back for a budget adjustment. We'll have to see how that goes if it does happen. And then the next one is talking about the reporting requirements. All of the, it's going to a more transparent reporting where the requirements are going to be available online. It is going to be simplified and shortened, that is true, but the net has been cast a lot broader, so now a lot more projects need to be reported on. So as Tim was mentioning, there's a lot more work that's involved in getting all these spreadsheets updated, and now they're going to be more available so that anyone can look at them, 24 hours a day. And then the last one on this slide is about new development, and I thought it might be helpful to give you a couple of examples. On this one, there's going to be what's called a 50% rule. So for example, if you're a fast food restaurant developer and you're going to come in with your fast food restaurant, if you disturb more than 50% of the site, you will have to treat 100% of the stormwater for the entire site, that first flush stormwater. So that's kind of a big deal. So obviously, if this rule goes into effect, we're going to alert any of our developers, and they can make business decisions. Maybe they can only disturb 49% and stay within the rules. But this is a very important thing for them to be aware of. Another example is when we did the development over at Garth. That one went in. The original one went in before the water quality management plan was required, that big document that Tim was just talking about. Well, when we did the most recent Garth development, they had to do that water quality management plan. There was an awful lot of creative water routing and dry wells and landscaping, and there was a lot of effort trying to take care of the stormwater to meet these requirements. So, as Tim was mentioning, development gets every time these permits come up for adoption, it creates new challenges for all of us to work with. There is a little bit of good news. We have, at least currently in the language, a 1-year implementation period. So hopefully we'll be allowed to have 1 year to revise our stormwater management plan so we can figure out how to implement whatever does get handed down to us from the regional board. And then we have been approached by the mosquito and vector staff folks, and they would like to partner with us to help address some of the vector control issues, which we're happy to do. I think that's a great venue for that. So what are the next steps? The hearing is at 10 a.m. on Thursday. I'm going to be there, and we're going to hold our breath and hope that nothing too major happens at that hearing. We'll be prepared to speak if there is something major, and if there is something that's in addition to what we briefed you today, we will bring it back to council either as an IOI, or if it's something really major, we may have to come back to council. And then, as I mentioned, we'll have 1 year to revise the stormwater management plan. And with that, we'll stand by for any questions.
I have a question. As you were talking earlier about this Thursday meeting, and you said that you had been asked to speak for, this is what I heard, for cities. So it's on Thursday is the application for all of the cities in Coachella Valley? Or is it just this La Quinta?
No, it's all the cities. It's the county flood control district, and the Coachella Valley Water District. All of us are under the same permit.
Under the same permit.
Correct. And the lead agency is the county flood control district, and so they normally do all the speaking on behalf of all of us. But they said this is such an important hearing that they would like to have someone from the cities also speak with them. And they asked me to do it, and I said, fine.
Do you need a cheering section?
We need all the help we can get, because one of the items I didn't put a slide in here for, because we don't know how it's going to pan out, is we have advanced warning that the EPA folks, these are folks coming from Washington, D.C., they want to impose what's called low impact development, which if you're in a coastal community, those are things like rain barrels, rain harvesting, bioswales. Basically the idea is to keep the water on the property. And it makes a lot of sense for coastal areas. For us, we keep water on the property through retention. And if a lot of the LID requirements are imposed on us from EPA, and if they're not desert appropriate, then they could be very expensive. And so what we're hoping is that they, make our requirements desert appropriate. But it's difficult from somebody that's coming from Washington, D.C. to kind of wrap their brain around 120 degrees in a desert, because they're trying to regulate water quality for the whole nation.
Now, we probably should have had a meeting down here. Was there ever a discussion early on that this was an unfunded mandate?
Well, that has been brought up many times, and if you ask those that are regulated, we have one opinion, and then when you ask the regulators who hand down the laws, they have a different opinion.
What?
I can get
Surprise, surprise. But, you know, there are a lot of cities in the state of California that have made applications to the mandated board, whatever it is. But, and you'll never get any money unless you put an application in. And not just for this. There's other things that I think we just go ahead and pay for unfunded mandates. And I think it's probably more important to get on the list, if there's ever any money that they're gonna throw around.
You bet.
If you're not on the list, you're not gonna get any money. But, and so I don't know. How long have we been doing this permit? I know it's been a long time.
We have been over 15 years, so this will be the 4th permit term, so a little over 15 years.
Yeah.
And we are able to offset our costs somewhat by the CSA 152 monies that we collect, $9.99 on the tax, on the property tax.
Right. Okay, all right, that's all I have now, thank you.
This is all for all of the cities and all the communities in the state of California. We're dealing with 2 different entities, Southern California and Northern California. Do they have, I'm sure, different problems because the rainfall that they get? Is there any problem with what we're both trying to do?
Some of the challenge that we faced in trying to craft the language for this permit is that the staff in Sacramento has an entire state that they're regulating. And you've hit it exactly on the head. They have a lot of areas in the north that have lots of water and have very different issues. So that's why on one of the previous slides, we had a section about the environment. We loaded up, we probably added about 4 pages of climate, soils data, weather data, rainfall data. We tried to put a lot of data in there that would help characterize our little part of the world as a desert environment. We only get 3.6 inches of rainfall per year. And so the case we were trying to make is that we are a desert and please give us desert appropriate requirements. We all believe in water quality. We want good, clean water. But please make our requirements desert appropriate and not give us the same requirements that they have on the bay or one of the coastal areas.
Can understand that.
So I'm thinking the name should be Mr. Cactus or Mr. Sandman, since we're trying to promote lack of water versus raindrop. But is there any element in the argument, or is it irrelevant based on the committee you're speaking to talk about what the economic impact could be if businesses cannot comply and implement to the cost of this new permit?
Thank you for that question. Thank you for that question. I forgot to mention that we have done extensive liaison with Desert Valley Builders Association and with the Building Industry Association of Riverside chapter. We've had extensive telephone calls, emails. There was a letter that was generated by the DVBA, by Gretchen Gutierrez. And so we've encouraged them to also be in attendance on Thursday morning. I don't, I'm not sure if the effort will pay off, but they were very interested and were very willing to listen to what we had to say. And it appears to me anyway that they understood the ramifications of what could happen on Thursday.
I know that they understood, because anytime we've got an increase in fees, just going through our DIF process, I mean, it literally, they look at every impact from commercial and residential, not to mention if we, if In-N-Out Burger can ever afford to come into La Quinta because of the 49 versus 50%.
Right.
Yeah, just, we want to make sure we've got some controls over that and some flexibility.
And unfortunately, being financially infeasible is not an excuse in the eyes of the board. It's just that you have to have some other reason why it's infeasible. It can't be just cost.
Good report. We'll look forward to
Thank you.
to follow up. And Mr. Raindrop isn't gonna work, let us, right?
I think it'd be nice if you could find a way to divert some of that stormwater up in Northern California down here to
There you
Southern
go.
California.
There you go. Thank you, guys.
I gather there's nothing further to be said on this subject, so we'll move on to study session number 2, and that's a discussion of the procedures for appointments to boards and commissions.
Mr. Mayor and members of the council, this item's before you because you will soon be considering appointments to our 7 boards and commissions. We have currently 17 positions that must be filled, and every year we go through a process that has not really been defined as to how those positions are applied for and filled. In discussions I've had with council members and community members, the question came up of, well, why don't we ever talk about how this appointment process takes place, and are there any parameters that we should be considering as a community? So in the staff report, we laid out the process that we currently use and the processes that other cities use, which vary rather dramatically. And these processes are not established by any state laws in that, but instead by the culture of the local community. The purpose of this study session is to provide input to staff if you want to make any modifications to the process that you are currently using. The various questions we laid out is, should the current process be changed? Do we need the current number of boards and commissions? Should there be any term limits? Should the applicants be limited to applying to only one commission, or shall they apply to more than one commission and state their preference, and should the city council interview process be held any differently? If you elect to make changes to the process, then we would come back on July 2nd to institute those changes, depending on if we need to change the municipal code or ordinances or things of that nature. And then depending on the degree of those changes, we would then be scheduling the follow-up interviews for appointments on July 16th. If no changes are being recommended by the council and we proceed forward as our current practice, then we would look to schedule the interviews for July 2nd. And that concludes our report, and we stand ready to receive your direction.
Questions of staff?
I don't have a question, but I'd like to move forward with some ideas.
Oh, sure.
Okay. I would like to see changes in the current process. One would be moving from 2 years to 3 years for a board appointment. A person who applies can apply for more than one position, but not no order of preference. And along with that, I think some people have been disadvantaged in terms of our doing the interviews alphabetically. In other words, I don't know what would come first alphabetically, building and construction, community services, or whatever. So we'd take all the commissions, put them in a hat, and just draw them out, and that would be the order for us to do the interviews. That may sound like a bit of a crapshoot, but it's better than the way we're doing it now. Some people are disadvantaged with the straight across the board following it alphabetically.
You mean A starting first?
No.
A random selection.
I'm always first.
Random, yes, okay. I would propose a rotation out of the particular board after 2 terms, sit out for whatever, and then may reapply. The exception for that would be if it's a board and a professional person is required as a member of that board. Those are my ideas.
Well, if I could pick up on that, I certainly think that it would be a good idea for all of the commissions to be 3 years. And so, I mean, we have some that are 3 and some that are 2. And actually the ones that are 2 years are really high profile when you look at community services and the Architectural, Landscaping, and the Planning Commission, they, you know, a lot of these, it's kind of a challenge for me to see the city the way it is now because it's kind of slow. But in the boom years, when it was going fast, and we had lots of projects, and those folks were working late at night, as we were, it takes a long time to really learn your position. And if you're only there 2 years, and then you're up for another appointment. So I think 3 years is a really good compromise there. So that would be my opinion on the 3 years. And as far as, I think pulling it out, at the beginning of each of the meeting, we would pull all of the commissions,
Right.
and they would go in that order, and then the next year, we would just do it again. Because that spreads it around, especially if you've applied for two commission seats. And I would maybe, if somebody applies for 2 seats, and one comes up and that person is appointed, I would think that would automatically withdraw them
Right.
from the second appointment.
So you're saying you support a 2 application?
Yeah, if they want to.
And I didn't get clear, I thought you said 1 commission, but with preference, so I don't understand what you meant on that.
No specific preference, like they were asked this time for their first preference and their second
So you're
preference.
okay with applying for 2 different commissions as well?
Applying for 2, but no preference.
Yeah. And then I think the concern is that the historical preservation and the architectural review board and housing, we have professional positions that need to be filled, and a lot of times that's been a challenge.
Right.
So that person would not necessarily, and I think you used the word rotational.
Right, but not
I think what we're trying to do here, and for a long time I've thought that, it's really difficult. We have so many people in the community that want to be on these commissions, and folks aren't moving around very much. So if we change it to 3-year terms, and somebody serves 2 3-year terms, they rotate off, and they can apply for a different commission if they choose. If they want to come back on that one after sitting out for a term, they can reapply again. They can rotate back on. So so nobody's asking somebody to serve 6 years and then go away, and then we never want to see you again. So I think that there's probably a lot of merit in that concept. Let me look real fast and see.
The other thing, Terry, was which I don't have a very good handle on, well, I kind of do, but when this starts. So those folks who are already serving just serve out their term, and the folks that we appoint now go into a 3-year. Is that
Right.
okay?
I think we would start this if there's an agreement, or even with other changes, whatever comes out of here today. When we make appointments for this year, those appointments would be on the new system. And so that it would start almost immediately. So.
If I may, if you wanted to try to get them together, you do have the power to extend existing terms. If you were trying to create a staggering evenly or.
No.
Okay.
I think we need staggering.
We
So
do,
the
we
council-
need some
we need
staggering, but I
some
would.
to stay and some to.
You would have that
You would
already
still
because
have
people
that.
are finishing
If we
in a
don't figure
2-year
it out,
term or
we're
we're going to
extending
3.
terms, Yeah, if we run into a problem on something like that, we can always kind of look at it and address it. But anyway, I think it's time. I think, we've been working on the one system for a very long time. And it's just, we want to get as much community involvement. And then after we have this discussion, I have some ideas I think the commission should be a little more involved in some of the activities that we have. For instance, we're going to have a discussion on annexation, SOI. Who knows where it's going to go? I don't know where that discussion's going to go, but who better to hear that than the planning commission? So I think that you know, we ought to make it clear. I don't think we can make it mandatory that they're here because, you know, people's schedules are set. But I think we ought to strongly recommend, and then if we ever go back and discuss the assessment districts, core parks and such, community service, planning commission, finance, I think they all should be here because they're actually ambassadors for us in the community.
Very much so.
So I think we need to start remembering that we have these folks and
utilize their talents.
Use them.
Exactly.
You bet.
And they're important, and they represent us, and they
Yeah.
do it very well.
Okay, I agree in terms of changing the process and looking at some different options. I agree with the term limits, and I would suggest 2 terms at the 3-year term, so 6 years total.
Yeah, and then it's a rotation, not term limits.
It's, okay, so a term limit, once that term limit is up, I would say that the individual can apply for another commission
Yes.
as soon as they complete an existing commission they'd be serving on. If they want to go back on the same commission, there needs to be a year break.
No, a term break.
A term break.
You want a whole 3-year break? I'd say a year is, just don't know.
Well,
I'm open to that if, you know.
Yeah,
they-
I'm open to hearing.
I agree with the exception rule in terms of those professionals. I mean, I look at a Maria Puente and we can't not have a professional on there.
Yeah.
She served us well. The interview process, I don't mind shaking up the order, but I think we should still do it by commission. Is that?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Okay, 'cause I'm thinking, I can see,
No,
that's not gonna go well this way.
No way.
One of this, one of that.
No.
Were you wondering? Okay. Maybe I heard something different. It kind of sounded like a really bucket
no,
list, so.
No.
I agree, similar to how the councils are on the ballot or whatever, it's just you randomly by commission, okay. I would agree that we potentially make this effective now, however, you know, we've got some incumbent issues, and I guess I would look at anybody that has already served 6 years that may be applying because their term is up. Maybe you grandfather them in with 1 term, so they're really only entitled to this next process of interviews, and then their 6 years or their 2 terms, or what are you calling it? Service rotations. Rotations are up. So that doesn't eliminate some of the people that have already expressed interest and submitted their applications. It would potentially impact, and would have to decide, if somebody already has 6 years come next year for the 2014 expirations, is that it, since it's been in effect a year, or do they get grandfathered into 1 incumbent term? That's something maybe we can kick around.
Yeah.
Or would have to decide to
Yeah,
make it
there's-
fair for the staggering, but I'm open to go either way, but yeah, you know, that way we're not impacting the immediate crew that's applied with the immediate change. But we still are saying, you know, you've already kind of, going in, you already served 1 term rotation, and you're only then entitled to apply for this next one. But I still think that they should only apply for 1 commission. It's like, what do you want to be? It's just because, again, we've got such interest lately, the last few years, so many good qualified people have stepped up, which is great, and the service of the commissioners has been fabulous, and maybe the commissions can help us provide another avenue or forum, so as the rotations are concluded, we don't want to lose that connectivity with those individuals who served us because they have been supportive of the city and they're involved, and what other role might they play from a citizens group or something like that, that still, we reach out to them, just like we would any other resident, so yes, term rotation limits of 2 at 3 years each I like, except the professional, put it in place now, and incumbents already go in. If they're over 6 years, if they're not over 6 years, they still have that opportunity for 2 rotations. And,
But if they've already been over 6 years, they have an opportunity to be
one more
term.
starting
of 3 years.
whatever we decide, if we put it in place in 2 weeks. That way they're not completely out as of this discussion, and they still have an opportunity to serve, since many of them have applied. That's
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I agree with pretty much everything that's said. My just concern on term limits is that I don't want to lose any historical knowledge that the members of these commissions have gained over the years. because I will never forget a discussion we had here at council one day regarding a particular community that complained about the road and the sidewalk being too small. And one of our council members was here when that development originally came. And she said, you asked for that road to be that size, and you asked for that sidewalk to be that size, and we allowed it. So we gave you what you wanted, and this was 10, 15, I don't know, 10 years maybe. But I hate to lose that institutional knowledge of our current members on these boards. I mean, they've been around for a long time, and they're well experienced. And it's good to have that experience, be able to see through some issues that developers bring to us. I mean, every now and then we get a developer with a little bit of smoke and mirrors, some pretty pictures, as you said about. And I appreciate the experience on these commissions to see that and recognize that. And so I'm a little challenged by term limits just for the sake of term limits.
Well, it's not actually term limits
It's
because
rotation.
that generally
A rotation, I guess, so
They're
if
rotating
anyone
out,
is off
sitting
one
out.
after 6 years, then they can then
They
apply
can
to a
come-
different commission.
Or they can
they
reapply
reapply.
after the sitting
The
out.
next go-around.
They
Yeah,
can apply to a different commission.
maybe the
while
next
they're serving.
two.
Okay. Then I'll,
Yeah.
one of the things that's mentioned here is regarding the interview process, to still keep the open interview process.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah,
Oh, yeah.
you
We
know,
have to
versus
do that.
private.
Yeah.
I like the open interview process because I like hearing other questions from other council members that I don't think of. So, but then as stated, I'm in support of it.
Yeah. And one thing we didn't talk about, but I think we all assume, or maybe, I think we need to keep all the commissions that we have at this point in time.
Yes.
Oh, yeah,
Yes.
definitely.
Yeah,
Okay.
I agree.
Just for
Just-
those sitting out in the audience.
Just one thing, and I want to make sure that the council has the latitude, because, there are certain commissions here that we don't get enough applicants. And we run into a situation where a person is, quote, termed out, and they no longer could be there, and we don't have any applicants to take the place. So we need the latitude to be able to say, okay, you can stay on this commission. Yeah. So I want to make sure we have that latitude to deviate because of conditions.
So appointment
Because
extensions, Kathy, is what
there
I
are
was talking
some
about.
commissions that are very popular and people want to be on, but we have others that we
No,
don't
and you're
get
right, I'm
enough.
just checking with Kathy to see how we could,
Your code currently allows you to do extensions
Okay.
of terms.
Okay.
If you,
Just make sure we keep that.
yeah.
right,
Yeah.
but can I ask a couple questions?
Yes.
I'm probably gonna have to help Frank.
We're doing the math, they're going, oh, this is not easy.
If you have a planning, you've mentioned if they've already served 6 years, they could do one more 3-year term. But if you had somebody, for example, that had served 4 years on the planning commission, with two years, I assume they start with a clean slate. Is that,
Well, they can have one more term of 3 years to have 7 years total.
okay, well, what I had heard originally was that they had 6 years in already, they could have one more term.
Well, we're just trying to catch up
For the
with those
first
that are
time.
already seated so that we aren't
Correct.
cutting them off.
But is it, I
So
heard
the
6
question is,
years.
I
if it was for-
suggested, since we're suggesting the rotation is a 6-year or
Yeah.
2 rotation limit, then anything 6 years or more that's already been served, what happens to the 6 years or under is what Kathy's asking.
Yeah.
So what if somebody's been on 2, 4, 3, 5? Do we let them start at 0 and they still have 2 3-year options?
No.
And
I
only
think
the
we-
6
no,
are
they
over?
have 1 3-year option.
One 3-year option.
So anything, so they maybe move that to 3 years or more, because there are a couple 2-year folks.
They could also move to a different commission.
Sure.
And apply for 6 years.
Go, so.
Yeah.
So then we're potentially revising our interest to anybody who's served, who's re-upping, is already starting with a 1-year rotation under their belt as a grandfathered entity. Which helps you.
I'm just
well,
not really
now I'm
ready to
a
make
little
a
confused.
flat yes, we know
I
that.
always,
Because there's
I thought you were
certain-
dropping it to 3 years, so that if somebody had served 3 years or more, they could still have a 3-year term.
3 years.
Correct.
If they had 2 years though, they could come in and have 2 more 2 3-year terms. If they only had 2 years of service when they come now.
I'm
So
okay
they-
with that.
Okay,
Yeah, I'm
I-
okay with
Yeah, I'm okay.
that's,
Okay,
that's
so
fine.
we're, so
I
we're
thought-
going from 6 to 3.
Yeah.
That would
Anything
make,
3
Make
and
it
above.
fair.
Yes, yes, Okay. yes.
Anything 3 and above is an incumbent of one service term
With
rotation.
regard to this year, we have some complications that some of your commissions expressly by the code have a 2-year term. We can certainly change that. However, it is a time-consuming process to change. We have to bring back an ordinance, then we need to have a first, second reading, 30 days. So we could come up with something where you go ahead and make a 2-year appointment. If you want to proceed with the appointments, you can make a 2-year appointment and then we can have you take an action to extend it.
Yeah, I think that's,
Okay.
Yeah, I think
That
that would be
way
the way to do
it's
it.
for you.
Well,
And then we'll change all
it
the
allows you
retroactive.
to proceed.
Okay,
Because
sure.
I think none of the other things that you've mentioned would require code changes.
That's good.
I mean, we will, we will.
the number out of the hat when we require code?
I've already
I
hit
didn't-
once today.
if you're gonna say something funny, say it loud enough so that they can hear it. No?
He wanted to
It
know
wasn't
if
that good.
picking the number out of the hat would require a code.
So you're good, Kathy? You got it?
I think you can proceed, and we can add it'll just add one more step. We'll have to come back with you to extend the
Well-
terms that you've done, that were limited to 2 years, add another year to them,
Okay.
and then they'll be 3 years.
Well, this is a study session. You're gonna have to bring this back to us.
Correct, but it
We
just
can't-
impacts the timing of when you're gonna take these up, because if you wanted to wait and make the appointments so that you're making them 3 years right off the bat, we'd have to get through the amendment process first.
Are there any?
No, let's just bring it back as a business item next time.
Sure.
And we approve it, we do our
Then we'll work
interviews,
through it. You go ahead
we
Then-
make
then-
our
Then you
appointments,
can do
and then you bring
the,
the thing back.
the legal things back.
And then after we approve
We'll
those,
do
then
it.
Very
we'll
good.
So Kathy, are there
amend the
any,
appointment.
are there any that don't require a code change that we can change the terms?
The year,
The year of service?
well, some of your commissions, the general rule is 3 years in your general, but I know planning commission is 2, and I haven't compared all the others.
Architects,
Which are there
what
too.
we do.
Architects 2, and housing is 2.
And then investment, investment advisory is 3.
So it's AORC and housing and planning.
It's just the 3 of them.
Community services 2.
And
So
so,
community services is 2.
Right.
So that's,
So, all right, so this still requires the same process. I
I
guess,
didn't get.
I guess the question I'd bring to Frank,
You emailed it to me.
Frank, I guess the question I would bring to you for staff to follow up before we go there is ensuring that all the applicants now realize that we're proposing their service for 3 years versus 2 to make sure they're still interested in that timeline.
yeah, and that should be just made clear on the application or.
Well, their applications are already in, so
Right.
we'll have to
Right.
communicate
So you
with them.
just need to contact.
Right.
But I did want to talk about just a practical matter before you close on this, if I could, is the applicants were all notified months ago to attend tonight and all had carved out that time. When we knew this was going to be postponed, we took our best guess and told them that it would be the 16th that they should save. And even at that, some of them couldn't make it. So I'm wondering if we should allow some flexibility, maybe split up the interviews over 2 meetings, Frank.
And try to get everybody.
So
that I
in
can
one
get
commission or two
everybody
commissions?
in front of you.
Yeah.
And I can do the random drawing for those commissions where the applicants can attend.
I think we ought to give her the latitude
Yes,
to
sure.
do the best she can
So
to
she can
get
a
the
full
most
slate
people
Right, and
here.
take a phone call, let's see how we can do it.
Yeah.
Sure.
And do it over 2 meetings.
Absolutely.
If we can get it all in one, let's do it, but if we can't get this.
Sure, yeah.
Different shop.
Okay, thank you.
All right, but we'll figure it out.
Okay, the only other thing that I wanted to add, in terms of Susan, you're notifying those who have applied. I believe that they were notified that there was a for them to list their preferences, we're not doing that. So you're gonna have to tell them that.
So
it's
you
not
guys,
that to them.
okay, so you guys are in agreement of one commission only?
No.
We didn't decide.
No.
Oh, just to remove the preference?
Yeah.
Still think this should-
And then it also makes you ineligible for consideration on the other one that you have your name on if you can select it on the first one. So they'll have to make their own decisions.
Okay, we all
Okay.
all set? All
Yes.
right.
Thank you.
Okay, we'll move on to reports and informational items. Linda, do you want to start us off?
Sure. Our Chamber of Commerce actually meets early July, so I know the topic of discussion will be the 2 days before our 4th. So I'll give an update on the last Exchange Committee meeting. CVAC Conservation Commission, we approved the budget this past meeting, as well as a renewal of the contract to have CVAC continue the management role for the multi-species habitat plan. The Conservation Commission budget, by the way, will have a surplus of about $7 million. Energy and environmental, again, just that was more budget approvals and adoption of the contracts to continue the monitoring for all of the elements of multi-species actually as it related to energy and environmental. And then CDB meets this Thursday, or this Friday morning, but they are having their annual awards meeting and reception next week on the 27th. I believe, yes, at the Esmeralda, so it's not all the way in Palm Springs this year, which is great. And that's the event where they recognize line workers and folks throughout the hospitality industry at the resorts and hotels and restaurants for the work that they do, and as well as an update overall on marketing for the destination and contributions to TOT revenue based on their efforts to drive volume and people to visit our hotels and stay in our cities. So you're all invited to that. That's my report.
Okay, Christie?
I don't have anything, so that meets tomorrow. The airport authority, couldn't get a quorum. And we'll change this next month.
And just I wanted to ask you a question on the airport, Jackie Cochran Airport. Did you see the little blurb in the paper the other day? They were talking about Palm Springs and the flights that were coming in. And also there was a survey on how all of the other airports have decreased. And anyway, they said in there and something about the Jackie Cochran Airport, which is a privately owned small airport in the west.
It's not privately.
I know that. I'm just telling you, the desert sun again.
Wasn't you?
A small privately owned airport in the west.
Really?
Yeah.
Wonderful.
Yeah. So,
Lee?
sorry.
We had the CVAG Homelessness Committee, and they approved the new budget for Roy's. And there was obviously some zeros on the revenue side for the city of La Quinta, the city of Desert Hot Springs, and the city of Indio. And so, but they do forecast a surplus in their budget. So they did approve that. They did also, I mentioned earlier, they received some extra funding from the Riverside County. So they're going to take part of that money and buy some new equipment down there, but still put about $60,000 into reserves. There was some discussion, of course, of spending all the reserves, but they were able to put that away at the end of the day. We did have presentations from Martha's Village and all of the action that they have going on, which is pretty impressive, very impressive. And then the Coachella Valley Rescue Mission gave their report, and at the end of their report, I did mention that our city of La Quinta was looking to give $50,000 to them for their operations. And I mentioned that this is a big step for the city of La Quinta because we've never been one to give something for operations. It has only been a capital aspect in the past, but we're stepping up from an operational standpoint to work with the Coachella Valley Rescue Mission. And so otherwise, it went real well, and that's all I have.
So, Lee, I have a question on Martha's and their impressive report.
Yes.
How impressive? Are they working on?
They're working on
Emergency
a number of items.
shelters?
They don't have a homelessness program per se, because they don't have
the budget for that. But the food and the lunches, or excuse me, the breakfast and the dinners, and then the educational standpoint and the medical standpoint, they do have, they lost their in-house doctor, but they have someone else that comes in at least once a month. So they have a computer training workforce, you know, to help in these different programs. So I did talk to them to go out there next week and do a tour on what's going on out there to get an update on what they're doing. But it's impressive with the job training that they have going, the meals that they're serving, and then the health-related aspect that they have with a doctor coming in.
So they're kind of serving that case management type role of providing that coverage and trying to get them back
Right,
into.
you know, and then the CB Rescue mentioned their new program. They're building the new 5,000 square foot facility for the homeless, because that gymnasium has been full up every single night.
Right.
And so, they talked about that program, and I should also mention, they have the homelessness count that they did back in January. They had those numbers come out. The city of La Quinta has reported 5 homelessness. Now, one of the aspects they did though this time when they ran the count is they looked at, of the homeless, how many of you stay in current facilities and how many of you don't. And it was about a 60-40 split of those that stay in one. 60%, about 40% don't. And so, but the numbers overall, I mean, because I got on that board when they originally created in 2007, and the count that was done in 2007, and the overall homeless has come down, which is pretty impressive. Now, they used what they called multipliers in the past to say, all right, if we only get 100 people, let's say here, there's probably another 20%. So they had a multiplier in the past. This year they didn't look at that from the multiplier standpoint. But nonetheless, it was good to see the numbers come down in the homeless count. You know, with the economy we've had over the last 5 years, it's good to see it, you know, the new numbers per se. And so, you know, they're doing a good job. I mean, the homeless shelters in the valley are doing a very good job, especially with the limited resources. They have Roy's, again, they passed their budget, they're gonna have a surplus, I believe they're gonna have at least 1.2 million, 1.4 million in revenues to be spent. So they've done fine. I did mention to Gene Benson, I said, Gene, we are doing something. The city of La Quinta is doing something with the Coachella Valley Rescue Mission. So there were a few comments about La Quinta not helping on the list, but nonetheless, we are helping.
Well, that's that
Hey,
institutional
I get
knowledge.
it, the executive board too.
They want to go away.
Yeah, but when you ask them how much they've given to the Martha's or
Right,
the rescue
right.
mission,
They don't.
they don't.
So it's good that we are.
So let me ask you a question with respect to the homeless count, because I always thought that was a little goofy. It's a one-day snapshot.
Yes, it is.
And so what kind of?
What's the point?
You know,
Exactly.
throughout the whole valley, I mean, from Palm Springs to Mecca, they do their best guess to count on that one day.
Yeah.
And this year, they also had an interview process with the homeless.
Yeah.
Talking about, do you have a drug problem, an alcohol problem? Are you chronically homeless, meaning you're homeless for the last 2 years? And so they got a lot more information this year
That's really good,
on
because they
homeless.
haven't done that in the
No,
past.
they haven't. And they're saying most of the homeless that they interviewed were pretty helpful in answering the questions.
And a lot of them wanted to be out there. Yeah, they choose that versus
Right,
going through a
because like I said, there's at least
restoration
60% are quote chronically homeless that are gonna be there, you know, and that's their choice. And they're well aware. And now there was also the talk about transportation, meaning that you cannot take a bus from Desert Hot Springs to Roy's. There is no way to do that. So they're looking at funding more money because Roy's has 2 vans. So they're trying to create transportation availability to Desert Hot Springs and to a little bit more Palm Springs.
But you can't take a bus anywhere from any city to Roy's.
Correct.
Exactly. You can't get to
But
Roy's. You can't get to Roy's.
there's current transportation into Palm and out of Palm Springs to Roy's.
By the
And
vans.
by the van.
But not
They
the
had
buses.
one in Cathedral City, but it was, it stopped a couple of years ago due to funding, so they're looking to bring that back.
Good. That's a location.
That's all I have.
Thanks. Terry?
Okay, public safety, had a meeting last Monday, and we had a presentation from, I think everybody will remember Frank Taylor, He's a retired sheriff's captain, and he gave us a presentation on the unmanned aerial systems, the UASs, conceptual program. They are available to come out to much like we had the Salton Sea presentation. They are available, and they're going to be looking at coming out. Probably wait until after August, more into September, October, at my recommendation, because a lot of cities go dark in August. And the only really, you don't never know whether it's kind of a protective thing or what, but in order to not get committee too riled up, Sheriff Smith was indicating that his interest in this program right now has a lot to do with lost hikers. Because of how many hikers, that they are rescuing out there, that using this particular piece of equipment would, well, do a lot of things. And people listen, no, they're gonna do what they wanna do. But right now, he does have an interest in that. There are some sections in some of the recommended guidelines about the communities working together with one kind of ordinance, because these things, when they're in the air and they're flying around and there's a hiker and they might be in the La Quintas Mountains, but then they go over, and so they don't want to have to stop and know what every city's particular ordinance is. So this is an interesting subject. I think it's going to
Cross water or pick them up.
Yeah.
Linda, did you say you have helicopter insurance or something? You were talking to me about it?
Reach helicopter, it's a medical helicopter, they do something, it's similar to AAA. You can do membership for $40 a year, and they will fly you anywhere for a medical need and within their jurisdiction. So when they're Mount Glamis or on the hiking trails and if something goes wrong and any medical assistance, it's a free helicopter ride.
Well, that's
Yeah, it is amazing, it's good for your whole family.
Yeah.
One fee for your whole family.
Good information to know. I haven't heard of that before.
Absolutely.
Anyway, I'll leave this with staff, and if you want copies of it, then you can ask them. Then on, going down the list, the CBAG transportation, I don't think I brought anything back on CBAG transportation, but then RCTC, we did take up the Measure A program maintenance of efforts for the city of La Quinta, and that was approved there, just as the report went to them that we all out here approved to anyway. So it has passed another step, if you will. And the Quality of Life Sustainability Ad Hoc Committee that I'm on, which is for RCTC, but I'm also on a CEQA committee for the League of California Cities. So it was interesting to see bringing two different agencies in concert, if you will, on certain pieces of legislation. At transportation, they were supporting it, and at the league, who were opposing it. So I was able to bring that conversation to a head and get us both on the same page. So that worked out well. The revenue and tax met last Friday in Sacramento, and unfortunately, the news out of Sacramento stinks, as it usually does. This AB 1230 or burps, maybe it burped. Sure smells like the Salton Sea out there. But AB 1235 by Assemblymember Gordon, who was newly elected, and we are trying very diligently to forge good relationships with these folks. He is insisting on continuing to carry this requirement of local agency governing boards to receive training in financial management. And this engendered another great long conversation that we've had up there about the legislator mandating on cities that we have to go take some training that they really need the training in. They haven't included them, it's just us. And the equation that was used was, well, it's just like the ethics training. And fortunately, our representative on revenue and tax from the legal department, he spoke up at that point, and thank goodness that he did. I had already come unglued, so they knew where I was. But the attorney made the point that the ethics training that we all take is a one-on-one thing. It's between you and the ethics that's in front of you. You make your own decision. Whereas all of these other decisions, for instance, the financial management of the city, the five of us up here make. And if there's one of us is dumb or two of us is dumb, so be it. That's what the community voted in. And we live in the kind of world where folks can run for office and they're not required to. I said, if you want to do it before they run for office. But you'll never get that either. So anyway, they're going to get back with him and try to convince him that he needs to drop it. Then we did manage to get SB 673, which this is what I was talking to you about earlier.
Yes.
Requires preparation of a cost-benefit analysis before a city or county may approve a permit to construct retail or commercial facilities receiving over $1 million in subsidies. Like we don't already do that.
I wish we can offer
We
over
got that one
subsidies
killed.
these days.
Yeah, we got that one killed. But the ones we aren't getting killed, 981 is still moving, but where is it? What is it, SB 7? Is that what it? SB 7, which is the Prevailing Wage Act, is back. We're going strong, and we're back fighting that again, trying to stop it. These on Friday we had an hour to go over to the Capitol. They sent us really well prepared. Green is for the assembly members, and as they call them, red, I call it pink, was for the Senate. And these were the bills that we found helpful to cities or harmful to cities. And there's SB 7 was the Steinberg Public Works Charter of Cities. The talking points, and it included the fact that this was approved by the California Supreme Court. What's their point up there? But anyway, I brought these back, and there's enough here for each of you to have one of these so you can see where we're really putting emphasis and what we want to see killed. And I think, Mr. Mayor, that is all. And then we make sure that's all.
Okay. I was just involved with Sunline, and we just had our finance preliminary review of Sunline, and we're in the black.
Good.
And that, we're healthy, and I still think that our previous manager, who was on paid administrative leave, had a lot to do with this and that. And contrary to others, it's a shame that we're going through what we're going through. But the good news is we've approved the budget, and the budget is in the black by a couple of $1 million. That's good. But that was all I had in that. So we'll move on to department reports. City manager.
I actually have 3 items, Mr. Mayor, that's come up since the agenda. One, I've been in conversation with Dr. Rutherford at Desert Sands Unified School District, and we'd like to reinstate 2x2 meetings that occurred between the City Council and the Board of Trustees and staff. He suggested August 28th, which is a Wednesday. And at the last council meeting, Mr. Osborne stepped forward saying he'd be interested, so we all could discuss if there'd be another council member that would be interested. So that's one item. The second is that we received correspondence from the Coachella Valley Water District soliciting the city's support of their actions to defend their position against the Agua Caliente tribe and the legal dispute they have there. So they're looking for letters of support from the cities in their service area, so seeking direction on that. And
Well,
then,
I think we should do it.
I think we
I
should.
do too. There's no question about it.
That's an easy one.
and then the third item is an information item that last Friday we were visited by 2 gentlemen who are representing a group that is starting an initiative drive to reinstate redevelopment. And they're looking for city support, at least in the initial stage, dealing with drafting a ballot measure from that. Sent out some materials to you. We don't have to take any action on it, but there's rules afoot to try to qualify an initiative for the November 14 ballot that would, in Wisconsin, the Constitution, the city's right to have redevelopments and deal with the clawbacks and things of that nature. So, more to come there.
I'd like
And they want, what, 50 grand
Yes.
to join? Let's make sure we know what we're dealing with.
Wait till after our hearing.
Yeah, I'd like to comment on that if I could. We have court dates setting, coming up, and I think those are critical to protect, number one. We don't need the state any more angry with us than they already are. So if
We need to put it on the back burner.
well, I think so, and I think it's also important to remember that it costs over $10 million to do an initiative. You'd be surprised what we've gone through in the league. That's the bottom line.
Right.
That's the cheapest. Now, that's without labor coming after you and the schools coming after you and public safety coming after you. No one's going to like the idea of reinstating this. And I know that Southern California has some challenges with a lot of things that go on up north, but I'm not sure that Orange County is really thinking clearly now. And while they're going through their mist, trying to sort all this out, I'm not sure that I want to put $50,000 over there. So I think that we have some time to
Well, we don't want to make an issue out of it now, that's for sure. Not until we get through our court dates, you bet.
Ready? Well, I'm not available on August 28th to be the other two. I'm visiting my folks in Idaho that week. If Frank was looking for another person to meet with the school.
Oh, I forgot that there was, I just assumed that being a volunteer down here took care of it, but
It
it
could be
is
myself
2 by
and
2.
Frank.
It's 2 by 2.
Yeah, it is
yeah.
2 by 2. I
Or
can't
maybe-
make the commitment, because my husband will divorce me.
Oh, let's see, lay that one out.
Still haven't given them dates when we could go, and I just can't put that in there.
We'll be in top of them, so know where I'll be. Okay, city attorney,
I have no report.
city clerk,
No report.
okay, any of our city department heads? Nothing. Okay, fine. Well, now in our police department, I should look at that, in our fire department. Anything you want to bring up? No. Okay, we'll move on to mayor and council members' items. Anybody have anything? I have a little bit of an issue in that back in February, as you recall, when they were building and got it built, the Alzheimer's center that we've got here in the city of La Quinta, beautiful facility. I thought it turned out very nice in that. We dealt with the issue of art in public places.
Yeah.
And I was concerned about where that piece was going to be. I've taken time to go out there and drive it. You cannot see it from Washington. You cannot see it from Callao Bay. The only time you can really see it is if you drive into the parking lot and go way down at the far end. I think even for their own
Customers.
people that live there, it's in a poor spot to be seen in that. And as I said at the time, it says art in public places, and that is not a public place in that. And to me, at the entrance of Callao Bay, there is a mound there, 2 different mounds that this piece could be set on, and that everybody coming in or driving down the street or walking down the street could see it and enjoy that piece, because it's a beautiful piece of artwork in that. But unfortunately, it is sitting back, and we paid, what was it, $17,000 for the darn thing, and it can't be seen. And it's a shame in that, because I think the idea of art in public places is for the public and everybody to enjoy the artwork, not just a relatively few who drive all the way back to the far end of the parking lot to be able to be seen. And even the residents in there, of course, they wouldn't remember seeing it, but other than that. It's just a poor spot.
Regarding that, I did look for that off of Washington, and I did see a glimpse of it on Washington.
Yes,
But it's too
but
far back to.
Washington, you're driving, what, 50, 60 miles an hour, and I don't want you looking off to the right, I want you paying attention to the
I got
road.
a bit of a glimpse, and that's about it, and that was my concern as well.
So,
You know that it's gonna be available to.
Yeah, and I think we need to really address this in the future. And I talked to Edie about it, and Edie, she agrees and that, and I would like to see our community services people take a look at this thing and that, and really
Good idea.
make sure that when we do something like that, it's available to all of our citizens that can see it. You don't have to drive in through a gate or something like that to be able to see a piece of artwork in that. I think it needs to be shown and visible to our community. And that's all I had. With that,
Mr. Mayor, may I just,
sure.
I did a tour with my husband at the Coya Bay facility. Absolutely amazing.
Yeah,
It
this
was
is- yeah.
beautiful inside, wide hallways, very homey, very warm, just an absolutely beautiful center.
First class.
Came away with the same impression that you have. I had to look for it, I
Yeah.
couldn't find it. Edie, is there a way that we could possibly talk to Dee or someone over there and find out what it would cost to move it? Could there be a more appropriate place, and would they consider doing that?
I'd have to ask them if they would consider it. There was a
Okay.
discussion about it in the first place, because on the other side of it, as you would enter, is where they have all the Vertex stuff, and they were very adamant that it not go on that side. The mayor's correct, they did have some landscape at the entry, at the street, that it probably could have been a selection as well, but they wanted it on the walkway, and so it ended up on that other side. But I understood what the mayor's saying. I can talk to them and
Okay.
see. I'm thinking that they would expect it to be on the city's dime, because we're asking them to
Yeah.
move it after we've approved it.
Well, they didn't quite, I mean, it was given to us that it was gonna be close enough to Washington that everybody can see it, but it's very
Well,
difficult
there's
to.
bushes
to
and
see
trees
if you're
and
going down
everything.
Washington.
I understand, but that location is where it was agreed, and we took it to the commission, and they approved it, and then the council approved it. So that would be something they probably would be asking us to look at. I'll have a discussion with them, and we'll see what happens.
Right.
Okay, that's all we have. I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
Moved and second, all in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Lee?
All right, I'll reconvene the Housing Authority meeting of July 18th. We finished our closed session meeting, so I'll come to confirmation of the agenda. Are there any changes to the agenda by staff? None, any by the authority members? Seeing none, I'll ask for approval of minutes of May 21st.
So moved.
Second?
We have a first, second, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Thank you. Next, we have the consent calendar.
Move the consent calendar.
Second.
Have a first, second, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Thank you. Next, we have the business session of resolution to adopt the fiscal year 2013-2014 City of La Quinta Housing Authority budget. Do we need a staff report?
No.
I'll take a motion to approve then.
Motion to approve. Motion to go second.
We have a first and second, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Thank you, that item passes. Next, we have a study session regarding Washington Street Apartments Phase 2 design. Staff report, please. Les?
Thank you very much. We have the honor of bringing forward to you for your consideration, review tonight, Phase 2 of the Washington Street apartment complex. As you know, there's been a tremendous amount of effort underway in planning for renovation work and expansion of that property. And we have the opportunity to show you our Phase 2 efforts with that. And I'd like to have John McMillan from the Tallman Group run you through that. So, John?
And members of the board, it's my honor to be here as well. I also have with me the project architect for this endeavor, Eric Naslund of Studio E, and he'll be running through the PowerPoint to present this project and kind of how it works and is cohesive and comprehensive with the original Phase 1 development that was entitled in February of 2012. Prior to the Housing Authority putting the project on hold with the dissolution of the redevelopment agency. Since that time, there has been a lot of design work on this project. Original intent was to bring forward and do the construction documents for the Phase 1 entitlements. We got into this project again when it restarted in August of last year. We started the construction documents, we ran those out till about December. We were about 90% complete with construction documents. We started discussing the possibility of getting some additional tax credit financing on this project with National Core, an affordable housing developer. We worked through certain scenarios of the tax credit financing with rural development and National Core for this project. At that time, it was looking like there was a good possibility that this project would be able to leverage a lot of the funds that had already been set aside for it, some of which are the 2011 bond proceeds that are still in question. But there was the potential that with the tax credits that we kind of worked out with the affordable housing developer, with rural development, that might be possible here, that we would be able to bring the authority's per unit cost down on these units. So at that point, we actually looked to design the actual final phase of the project on the remaining vacant parcel that had not been previously designed. It was previously conceptually designed prior to the dissolution of the RDA, but it was not taken through to entitlements. So we moved on that quickly in an effort to get entitlements for that final phase, so that if we were able to apply for tax credits here in July, we would have a project that was ready to break ground, a project that we could get those tax credits on and move the project forward. Now, however, that is not the case where we are. There's still a lot of questions over the 2011 bond proceeds. There were some additional items that came up regarding combining the tax credits with the rental assistance. Those items are being worked out. I think the biggest thing was in March, we took this forward to the project team here at the city and said, we need to try to get this second phase, this final phase, entitled in time, so if we are able to do tax credits in July and make an application, a complete application for this project, we'll be ready. So planning staff and engineering staff, who was part of the development, kind of conceptual development team for this project, put together a schedule for the project. And they said, if you hit the critical dates here, we'll make sure we hit all the things that we have to hit on our end to get this project to entitlements in time for your July 3rd application. And I think that there's a lot of thanks to the staff here, because they did an amazing job. They put an amazing schedule together. We were involved with changing designs a little bit as we were in molding it, because it wasn't all already predetermined. And we had city staff on go-to meeting moments with all of the design team, and the project, it moved along very quickly. Our first time that we sat down with the entire project team and the city staff was March 5th, and 112 days later is June 25th, which would be the actual entitlements, and that's taking it from just very raw conceptual design all the way through to an entitlement package. Our first submittal was due to them in April of 18th, and 68 days later we're looking at entitlements. So I just wanted to acknowledge the efforts of the planning staff and the engineering staff here, because it was pretty remarkable process and how quickly that got through, and it's...
Who had the whip?
You know what? I have to say, they had the whip as much as, probably more than we had the whip. There was times when we would get phone calls and be like, you need to start thinking about this because this is coming up. And there were things we were already starting to think about, but they were very active in making sure that we met that schedule just as well as we were on the other end, you know, making sure the whole project and the design team was moving it forward. But it was very impressive.
Congratulations to all of you.
So, yeah, and with that, that's really the one part I just wanted to touch on there. With that, I guess I'd like to hand this over to Eric to kind of go through the PowerPoint presentation of the design, the original design of, he just touched base on the original project and then how this ties back to that original project.
This, you're talking phase 2?
Final, phase 2, yes.
Yeah. Now, phase 1, it seems to me it was not the same architectural design, was it?
It's very,
Similar.
the new elements of phase 1 are the phase 2 buildings are identical buildings. And there was the thought there, we looked at some slightly different design, but went back to buildings that matched the original phase 1 and just oriented them a little bit differently. And the reasoning there was to keep get a cohesive development,
compatible,
and also cost savings in the eventual development of the project.
Yeah, I didn't remember the 1950, 60 design craze that you have on this thing as phase 1. I didn't remember that.
And a lot of that really went back to the original roots of the project,
Yeah.
which really have a lot of that feeling.
With the shed roofs.
I mean, that's that is the existing project. Just building off of that. So with that, I'd like to turn it over to Eric Naslund.
Okay. Was that what it's going to look like?
Okay. Well, good evening now. I'm going to walk you through a little bit of the design. John, I want to reiterate what John said. The working relationship with the staff here was quite extraordinary. It was very much a team effort to get here. It was a kind of a rare thing, frankly, to see it go so smoothly and so cooperatively. So to be congratulated. Those are the existing buildings, as you well know, and they do have a bit of this idea of low sloping shedding roofs, and that was the starting point for phase 1. So you can see here in the orientation, existing apartments, is there a pointer on this thing? Okay. Well, I'm going to go up here and point. Phase 1, the existing buildings, all the new buildings will float around it. Phase 2 that we're talking about now, final phase. In phase 1, we did rehabilitate the existing buildings and make some changes. We added common areas, we added a laundry building, a big common building itself with a meeting area, a swimming pool, and we had deliberately oriented the drive here along the edge in order to facilitate this eventual link, which is what we're taking advantage of right now. So the phase 2, the site plan here, is based on a couple of key ideas, and that picks up on what's happening in phase 1, which is this notion that the entire community is stitched together with this kind of pedestrian-friendly series of places and spaces that are all there for everyone to use. Common building, the laundry, outdoor gathering spaces are all knitted together in a way to mimic the community. And that same thing happens here, where we're essentially trying to create a pathway that wiggles its way through the site, connects commons building, laundry building, lawn area, a retention park, etc. So they're all knitted together. Here's an aerial view of that from the kind of southwest. The commons here, the laundry building here. This is that kind of Paseo linkage through here, and these are the new buildings. Another thing to point out is the idea about parking. Cars are convenient but contained, as it is in phase 1, which means that they're very close by, they're very easy to use, but they don't, it's not as if you're walking through parking lots all the time. The notion here was to kind of create these, what we're calling parking rooms. They're essentially just kind of green fencing around, green filled in fencing, and they contain the car. So when you walk through here, you're walking through primarily people spaces rather than car places. And then the idea is to cover those cars and provide an opportunity for photovoltaics in the event we can get to The residential buildings themselves are based on this idea of sloping sheds that meter back and forth, and these thermal chimney pieces, which are on here. And that's, again, just like the buildings from phase 1.
May I ask a question?
Yes, of course.
About the thermal chimney?
Yes.
Are those like the ones at Vista Dunes?
They are very similar to the ones at Vista Dunes.
Because the
Yes.
ones at Vista Dunes don't work. They're ineffective
Because they're having to, they're not cranking them out, or you're saying that they,
I don't know. When we did a tour, when I did my first tour of Vista Dunes, because I asked about that,
Mhm.
it was supposed to help with the hot air going
Yes,
out.
right.
And they really, I guess it asked the residents pretty much not to use those.
And I can add to that. It is the difficulty of it, because they were crank operated, and that was addressing some of the problems that had happened in earlier models of those where they actually had motorized versions, and the motorized versions were clogging up with sand and then not working. So we figured to go to the manual crank versions, and some people use them, but the majority of the people don't take the effort to use them. And some of them find it a little bit difficult to use because you're reaching 10 feet in the air with the little thing on the end of the pole, and it's a little
So
more
how is
difficult.
this gonna be different?
The difference here is that these ones, addressing the concerns of Vista Dunes and the original design, these ones have actually like a power assisted fan. So it doesn't rely on you opening a window. The vents sit up above, fan below. The fan sucks the hot air out. It's like an attic fan, but contained in a chimney type space. And it doesn't require, the thermal chimney is really still providing the natural light that was coming in, like Vista Dunes. And it was providing kind of an automatic means to turn on a fan to exhaust the hot air out. And today there's a lot of movement to have air replenishment in units, so fresh air intake constantly, and they've got some very, very silent fans, so you can have, it's not the big whirl of the giant exhaust fan, and you do it in a matter of seconds, but you can have a fan that's just gonna continually migrate that hotter air that's collecting in those higher spaces out of the building throughout the day.
So the fan runs 24/7?
It doesn't, it does not. It is controlled by either a thermostat or a switch.
Oh, okay.
And then the above the fan opens up for that?
There are
or is it always
louvers.
open?
Louvers above the fan.
Okay, will open up.
Yes.
When you turn the fan.
Yes.
So they won't get clogged up the same.
Right.
So
That was,
was that a fault of leads?
I wouldn't say it was a fault of leads. It was just probably a design thought that from the first go around.
Well, did
right?
we let leads know that that system doesn't work?
They're gonna
You
take
know, they-
away our platinum.
No, they're not gonna take away our platinum.
They weren't pushing for that. That was not something they pushed for. They gave us, there was plenty of other things we could have done. We liked the principles behind that thermal chimney,
Okay.
and we thought the manual
So then
mechanism.
should we go back and retrofit them? Because we like them so much.
We're gonna let that sleeping dog lie.
Okay.
I would say over time the operator might.
Yes.
I'm gonna be late.
Sorry, go ahead.
No, you need to understand, so I'm glad you asked that question. The thermal chimney right now essentially comes up, there are windows, fixed windows around it, so you get the daylight in. There are louvers controlling the light. Above that is the fan that John described. It blows up. Above that is the condensing unit for the unit itself. So in one fell swoop, we took care of 3 different systems all at once. And so that's why they stick up sort of tallish, but they're intended to be that way, to do all those things, because then you don't have the condensing unit sitting on your patio humming along all night long, etc. So the plans themselves are just simple interlocking plans. They run front to back, north to south, and we did a thing where we use things like cabinetry and storage and closets as the kind of buffer between units in order to help make the livability unit to unit better, so you don't have noise transmission, et cetera, going on. And an important consideration about this is that there are shaded spaces at either end. So this is off the living space, is the outdoor patio space, which then engages with that pedestrian space. And the idea of all that, of course, is to make sure that people, when they're in the street, can actually interact with each other in a reasonable way. And then the shading on the southern side here is really about keeping that room cool.
One more interruption, what's the width of that pedestrian space?
Oh, let me get back to that one. So this varies, but it's about 40 feet across here. So it's
No, I meant the walkway itself, what's the width of that?
Okay, show me which walkway.
Just the walk,
Well, the walkway that we're talking
Well,
about.
the actual hard surface itself, yeah, that varies. It's probably 5 feet at minimum, but it gets bigger in lots of places. There are these little areas of landscape architects design where you sort of pull out and have bench seating, et cetera.
Okay, I just wanna make sure that, and I'm sure it does, meets all the ADA.
Yeah.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, she does, I mean, there's a number of folks out there with wheelchairs,
Yeah.
so
Yes.
we wanna make sure there's room for.
Yeah, 2 scooters to pass, if you're
Right.
saying. Yeah, yeah. So there will be plenty of those opportunities, yeah.
Within a 5 feet.
So 2 scooters probably couldn't pass on a 5-foot section, and that may cause us to rethink a place like that right there. But if it may be possible for you, if someone's coming, for you to wait here, come by and then go through, or we just broaden everything out. I would imagine those 2 scooters could get by in about 7 to 8 feet. So we could make all those walkways 7 to 8 feet.
Okay.
That's landscaping.
Yeah, yeah, it's quite generous in terms of the room we have out there, so I don't see why we couldn't just pull that out. Yeah, so that's pretty easy. So the plans I described, the buildings themselves, these are kind of flat up elevations, but what's really trying to explain here is the idea of the color palette, which is supposed to be a warm desert color, and the theme here is sustainable desert modern. So that has something to do with, so all the moves here are not capricious in any way. Every one of those things is based on this idea about how you respond to the climate, to the light, to shading, etc. Every one of those moves. So that was the term that we collectively came up with as a
Oh, we
group.
know Les came up with that.
There we
It was
go.
on his agenda.
Yeah. All right, I'm sorry. So the ends of the buildings have these varying roof forms. You don't see all these at once, but the ends, east and west ends of the building, the idea here is that they're enclosed. The service elements are there for meters and other kinds of things. So trying to prevent the kind of heat that comes from the afternoon sun. The Commons building, this is from that kind of Paseo working its way through. The idea is to have big outdoor shade, places where you can gather, because as you know, a lot of the times of the year it's perfectly wonderful out here outside. So why not be able to take advantage of that sort of thing?
Looks like the gas station at the entrance to the tramway.
There is some precedent for that. But the idea is to make sure that as you're walking through here, that you feel like you could participate and come in, be invited to come in and come here. The Commons, by the way, is based on an idea of a health and wellness piece. There's a fitness center piece to it. There's a kind of therapy room, and there's this idea that you connect to the pool. The pool's designed to be for laps as well as for recreation. So there's some of the elevations of that. The laundry building is across the one place where we actually have irrigated lawn is in the middle between these 2 buildings. And the idea is to have one little spot in here, and the same as it is in the historic parts of phase 1, where you actually could have a little panel of grass. But all the rest of the landscape is intended to be very desert appropriate. So here is that panel of grass, and then things like that. And the laundry room too invites, because you come and drop your laundry off, and you could be there for 45 minutes. So the idea is to make that an inviting place to hang out too. And it's right on the Paseo, so people walking by, hopefully you'll be able to chat with them.
That's where the dogs are gonna end up.
So there's the elevation. This is the color materials board. I think this is probably not quite an accurate rendition of the colors because of the screen resolution, but essentially we're looking at a sort of a.
I like those better than what I saw before.
Yeah, these door colors and porch walls are little accent colors in there. So it's
Grayish, is it grayish?
it's not grayish.
Shades of
It has an undertone of a kind of
Violet?
earthy violet. Yes. So that's the idea. So the actual materials board is here in the city, and you can see it if you prefer. And it'd probably be better for you to see the red thing. And I think that's it on the presentation design. I'm happy to answer any questions.
We fired him at you already.
Yeah. I'm happy to answer more questions.
Well,
Just to conclude the standpoint of where we're at in the process, this did go to the Architectural Landscape Review Committee. They wholeheartedly endorsed the site development permit review of that. Unfortunately, we were not able to get to the Housing Commission. Typically, it would go to them for their review, and they would provide comments for your consideration and for the Planning Commission's consideration. But we could get a quorum together, unfortunately. And it's now scheduled for next Tuesday for the site development permit application and conditional use permit application to be considered by the Planning Commission. So just to give you an idea where that's at, and we're hoping that next Tuesday that there will be support for that. And certainly any comments you have tonight, we'll incorporate that into the staff report for Planning Commission's consideration next Tuesday.
Have you had meetings with the residents there?
Yes.
Yes.
Oh,
Yes.
Showed them this?
There's been several.
What's their comments? Any problems?
There are people that have problems and concerns, and the biggest problems and concerns they had was there was going to be, because of the ADA requirement, there's going to be reduction to their closets that they now have, because we'd have to make the bathrooms larger, and given the existing footprints of the buildings, it really encroached on what used to be a nice large master closet. So they're losing some storage space, and that is of concern. We've kind of addressed that by building in a few more additional things, but that was their biggest concern.
In the carports at the backside, is there shelving or cabinets, things like that for storage?
There wasn't any additional storage built into the carport areas. The existing units that are out there now, what has occurred is there's a lot of pack rat kind of activity that goes on the existing patios, because they're fenced in and kind of, but we have not, there was not room.
Okay, if you're looking at the existing facilities compared to the new facilities,
yes,
are they gaining or losing storage space?
With the loss of the master closet space, they're probably breaking even with the additional storage space we've provided, because we've provided an additional bank of storage in the kitchen, along a kitchen wall, and then we also added a entry closet to the by the front door.
If they would want to provide storage, like many carports and many garages and that have storage, in the back, you drive your car because it's above your hood level, and that, would they be able to do that? Structurally, could they bring in a carpenter?
Yes.
And he could put it in there?
But that would be up to management whether.
Well, yes, no, but I meant,
yes,
structurally, would
yes,
they be able to do that?
Yeah, structurally they would. I don't know about the amount of space we would have that they would.
Okay.
Any other questions or comments?
No, thank you.
Now, these are, on this report, are all one bedroom?
Yes.
Are they all one bedroom?
All one bedroom.
What's the square
Well,
footage?
In this final phase, they're all.
And the thought there is there's a manager's unit and there's a maintenance person's unit that for on-site staff.
What's the
And
square
then
footage on these one-bedroom units?
683 feet.
So they're being under 700, I mean, that sounds pretty small.
The existing units are very tight, one-bedroom units, but they're very open as well. I mean, it's a pretty efficient floor plan. They're not, we really didn't have much room to expand the size of it with all the fair housing laws, working with a project where you've got rental assistance and wanting to expand that across the project with similar size units. There would be a discrepancy if you made some of them much larger units. So right now the federal subsidy is through USDA, and it provides rental assistance, to the existing project. And so the idea was to have an inclusive neighborhood where it wasn't like, oh, I want to live where you live, and why do you get the better unit? All of that kind of
So
stuff.
they're just being consistent on the size.
It's really to be
the
consistent.
current versus phase 2.
Yeah, but yet, I mean, they are designed very efficiently to accommodate that. I think the other thing with the senior population that we see out there, it's senior and disabled adults. Most often in the cases, it's a single person living in the unit. It's typically not two senior adults.
And that was my next, these are age restricted.
They are age restricted, with the exception of the existing 72 units. They also, because it is rural development, USDA subsidized, they have to allow for disabled adults. So if a disabled adult qualified for that space, they would be entitled to it just as a senior.
All right, thank you. If there are no other questions or comments, then that will be the end of that study session item. And then any chair or board member items? No. There being none, public hearing, I'll take a motion to adjourn.
Move, so moved. Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Thank you very much.
Okay, and at this time, I'll call to order the regular meeting of the successor agency to the La Quinta Redevelopment Agency for Tuesday, June 18, 2013. Let it be known that all agency members are present. Public comment, anybody wishing to speak? Nope. Seeing none, confirmation of agenda, any changes by staff?
Nope.
And by agency members? Nope. Okay, move on to approval of minutes of June 4th.
So moved. Second.
Move to second, all in favor?
Aye. Move the consent calendar.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, we'll move down to department reports, the oversight department report.
Just want to quickly state that on June 5th, the Oversight Board met and they unanimously approved authorizing the successor agency to move forward with refunding or refinancing $197 million worth of bonds. That material was submitted to the Department of Finance on that afternoon, and we received confirmation that they received it, being the DOF were reviewing it, and they indicated they would try to meet their 60-day time frame to review those documents. And so we'll be moving on to the next step.
So we'll sit and wait.
Yes.
Okay. All right, we'll move on to the business session, a resolution to adopt the fiscal year 2013-2014 successor agency, the La Quinta Redevelopment Agency budget.
Move it up.
Second.
We don't need a staff report, so it's been moved and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved. Second.
Move to second, please vote. Aye. All right, at this time, I'll call to order the regular meeting of the Finance Authority for Tuesday, June 18, 2013. Let it be known that all authority members are present. Public comment, anybody wishing to speak? Seeing none, confirmation of agenda, any changes by staff?
Nope.
By agency members? Seeing none, okay, we'll move on to approval of minutes of June 4th.
Move the minutes.
Second.
Move to second, please vote. Aye. All in favor? Consent calendar?
Move consent calendar.
Second.
Moved in second, please vote.
Aye.
Okay, all in, motion passes, excuse me. Move on to business session, resolution to adopt fiscal year 2013-2014 La Quinta Financing Authority budget. We don't need a staff report? Entertain a motion?
Move the resolution.
I have a question
Oh,
on that.
okay, excuse me.
There's $1,000 shortfall of revenue compared to expenses.
We looked at that earlier today, and I believe it's a typo, so I will make that correction in the budget. It should be on the revenue side.
Should be 677 or 67 on the revenue side? So
On the revenue side, it's gonna be $2,000 higher.
So we'll
So
actually have a
that it
surplus of
agrees.
$1,000.
Yes.
Okay, so motion to approve the finance budget with
As
the,
corrected.
as corrected.
Second.
Moved in second, all in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes.
Move adjournment.
Second.
Moved in second, all in favor? Aye. We're adjourned.